Tyler sneezed again as he stood in front of the hotel room door. 3 times he had raised his hand to knock, but each time he had hesitated. He was still in a great dilemma. Thinking about all the things that had happened the previous night was making him feel restless. "Boss, are you going to knock or not?" his driver asked. "It's starting to get late. I think you should go in now and see if she's all right." Tyler turned to him. "Who told you to follow me?" he asked with a cold gaze. The driver flinched. "I thought you might need my help," he said hesitantly. "Fine. I'll go wait in the car." He immediately turned and ran away. After the driver left, Tyler sighed before finally knocking on the door as he sneezed again. When no one came to answer the door, he started to get worried. He had been knocking for quite a while now. Tyler felt very uneasy, so he called his driver to get the room key. His driver returned with a hotel staff member, and they hastily gave the key to Tyler. He was beginning to feel quite troubled. He quickly opened the door, and when he saw that there was no one on the bed, he dashed toward the bathroom. The door was closed. He couldn't see anything through the tinted glass or hear a sound. Tyler's heart started to beat faster as he imagined what could have happened. He thought she might have fallen on the floor and lost consciousness. He was picturing the worst-case scenario. Without knocking or saying a word, Tyler hastily grabbed the doorknob and forced it open as he called out her name. "Amy!" he yelled. As soon as the door opened, Tyler let out a sigh of relief. She wasn't there. He cursed his overactive imagination. Tyler stepped out of the bathroom and calmly scanned the room. The worry in his eyes disappeared as he slipped his hand into his pocket. He grabbed his phone and made a quick call. "Find her," he ordered before hastily leaving the room. "You actually dare to ditch me," he said to himself quietly. An evil, mischievous smile crept over his face. He couldn't believe she had managed to escape from his grasp. Amy looked like a tired old woman as she tumbled out of bed. She had decided to run away because she didn't know how to face her fiancé. She was the type of drinker who remembered everything that happened to them, no matter how drunk she got. When she woke up and the memories from the previous night had started flooding back to her, she had felt like she was doomed. Her face was burning, and her heart was racing uncontrollably as she recalled everything that had happened. No matter how much she thought about it, she just couldn't gather enough courage to face him. She wanted to find a hole that she could crawl into, disappear, and never be found. As she thought more about Tyler, she felt a weird emotion growing stronger inside her, and it was driving her crazy. She didn't know how she would react when they eventually stood face to face. That was why she had escaped and hid in this house. It was her hideout. She wanted to clear her mind and calm her nerves before facing him. After spending an hour rolling on the bed, tugging at her hair, and hitting her head with a pillow like a lunatic, she suddenly heard a familiar voice calling out her name. She froze in place and then lifted her head from the large pillow. Her eyes widened as she listened, but after a second, she just buried her head back down and started kicking her feet violently on top of the bed. She knew that there was no way for her fiancé to find her here. It had been her hideout for many years. Even her evil stepmother had never managed to discover this place. Amy just thought that she had been hallucinating, but then she heard the voice again. "Amy, you..." She sat up and looked to find the source of the voice. When she discovered who it was, she felt like she had been struck by lightning. "Why? How did you even get in?" she stuttered. She couldn't even speak properly due to the shock. She couldn't believe that he was here and already inside her room. She bit her lip as she remembered that this man was anything but ordinary. He was the definition of a superhuman. "This is your fault for running away," Tyler said, and Amy fixed her posture. She tried her absolute best to keep her composure in front of him. She didn't want to show him how embarrassed and awkward she felt, and she especially didn't want him to know how affected she was just by him being there. "Run away? What are you talking about?" she asked, feigning innocence. Tyler narrowed his eyes. Suddenly, he moved toward her and pinned her down on the bed, causing her to gasp. Don't tell me you actually forgot how many times you tried to take advantage of me last night, he said. His gorgeous and handsome face showed a sly smile, causing Amy's confidence to shatter into pieces. Episode 302, Put on a Show. Amy was stunned by Tyler's words. She wanted to topple him over and run away again. She felt her body heating up with extreme embarrassment. Before her instincts caused her to flee, she managed to restrain herself from going berserk. Well, maybe it was her pride that just refused to give in. Apart from the great embarrassment and awkwardness she felt, she didn't want to show him that she had lost. She couldn't willingly accept defeat. She wouldn't give him a chance to triumph over her. So she decided to turn on the charm. She posed seductively and gave Tyler a flirtatious smile. So, I actually did something improper to this handsome beauty of mine, did I? She pouted with fake sympathy. Well, it's not actually surprising, but I don't think I tried to take advantage of you. I believe you provoked me. How can any woman resist your beauty and charm? I was a victim of your irresistible allure. I'm sure your raw masculinity has caused many a woman to behave shamelessly. Can you really blame me? She explained nonchalantly. Tyler hadn't expected this type of reaction. She had turned the tables on him, and she was trying to lay all the blame on him. He was losing control of the situation and starting to get angry. Well, since you're my fiancé, I hope that whatever I did to you is already forgiven, she continued. But of course, if you still demand compensation, it can't be helped. If you want an eye for an eye, then I can only abide. She sighed and placed her hands above her head in submission. Is she serious? Tyler thought in surprise. How can she be so bold when it was her that he was really close to losing the battle at this point? But then another thought occurred to him. He remembered how good of an actor she was. He took a deep breath to calm his nerves and then flicked Amy's forehead. Be quiet, you mad girl. You don't have to tell me. I know what I am owed. One day I will take what's mine, so you better prepare yourself. Do you understand? He replied before he moved to sit on the edge of the bed. Tyler was glad that she didn't really seem to recall what had happened the previous night. He thought it was better this way because he didn't want her to be too embarrassed. Amy was surprised. She thought that he would continue to tease and embarrass her, but he didn't seem like he was going to do that at all. Something struck at Amy's heart. Even if her memory was blurry, what happened the previous night made her discover more about him and just what kind of man he really was. When she remembered how he treated her, her heart began to pound. It seemed like she was developing quite an admiration for this handsome man. She realized that she probably would never find another man like him in the entire world. Tyler coughed to clear his throat. Also, if you want me to forgive you, you better stop acting like some perverted old lady in front of any man you see. Do you understand? He admonished her with a serious gaze. Amy just smiled as she sat up and moved closer to him. Any man? She asked in a low voice. So you're saying I'm only allowed to act like a perverted old lady in front of you? Tyler raised an eyebrow as he looked at her. No, I'm telling you to stop acting like that entirely, he answered, and her eyes widened. Really? She asked. Isn't it all right if it's just with you? You are my fiancé after all, she exclaimed. Tyler was about to shut her up with a kiss when he suddenly sneezed once more. After he recovered, he unceremoniously swooped her up and carried her over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. This is for your own good, he replied, and she became puzzled. But because of the way he was carrying her, she had to protest. Hey, what are you doing? Shouldn't you be carrying me like a princess? She asked. This is your punishment for running away, he replied. How can you carry a lady like this? I will carry you like a lady when you start acting like one. Wait, why are you even here? I came to bring you back. Huh? Why? Someone needs you. Who? You will know once we're there. Can't you just tell me? I can't. It's a surprise. Now you're trying to kill me with curiosity, she exclaimed. Anyways, put me down. If you won't carry me properly, just let me walk. Tyler ignored her until he put her inside the car. He got in next to her, and the moment he closed the door, the car immediately sped off and headed to the airport. Episode 303, Special Gifts. A luxurious sedan came to a stop on the side of the street. The door opened, and a cute little boy stepped out, accompanied by a man that appeared to be his bodyguard. They both entered a store. Inside the store, the little boy was holding two things. He was having a tough time choosing between them. Uncle Ken, which do you think is cuter? This one or that one? He asked, and the big man beside him coughed to clear his throat. I think you should have asked your mother to accompany you rather than me. I'm bad with these kinds of things. I don't think I can be of any help to you when it comes to choosing which is cuter, he replied. The boy didn't even glance up at him. This is supposed to be a surprise, so I can't bring Mom or Dad with me, Sean replied before he lifted up the one he had chosen. Do you think this pink one suits Daddy? He asked. Ken couldn't imagine his solemn, cold boss ever wearing such a thing. He almost choked before he responded. I don't think your father would wear that even if you bought it for him. How about this black one? I think this one suits him better, he suggested. But to his surprise, Sean just shook his head. No, I think this one is the cutest. I'm going to buy this one, he said decisively, finally looking up at the man. Seeing how serious the boy was, Ken just sighed and paid for everything. Sean and Ken left the store and returned to the car. Have you bought what you wanted? Haley asked, and Sean nodded. Yes, Mommy, he replied as he sat beside her. The car started driving away. What did you buy? Brad asked. Sean put his hand inside the paper bag. Brad's and Haley's eyes were locked onto the little boy. They were both curious to see what he would pull out. Sean paused as he raised his head toward his dad. He was taking his time, purposely trying to tease them. In response, Brad averted his gaze, pretending he didn't care. As soon as he looked away, Sean called for his attention. Dad, can you put this on Mom's head? He asked, and Brad turned back quickly. He looked down at what his son was holding. He was shocked. Now he realized why Sean refused to let his mom come into the store. In the boy's hand was a pair of furry, white cat ears. Brad took the headband. He was puzzled about his son's true purpose, but he still went along with him. Brad looked at Haley, and she moved her head slightly closer to him. He raised his hand and carefully put the cat ears on her head. Is this fine? He asked, and she nodded. Yes, she said softly, as she raised her face and looked at him. As soon as Brad saw his wife in furry cat ears, he smiled. She looked so cute, he wanted to wrap her in his arms and give her a big kiss. However, Haley immediately turned toward Sean. Does it look good on me? She asked, and Sean's eyes sparkled. Mommy looks super cute, he replied happily. Haley hugged him. Thank you, sweetie, she said. Mom, can you put this on me? Sean asked. Haley looked down and saw another headband in his hand. This was a pair of small, yellow cat ears. With extreme excitement, Haley quickly put the headband on him. As expected, he looked even cuter than he had before. She gave him a big hug. My baby is so adorable, she exclaimed. These yellow cat ears are almost as cute as you, she said as she hugged him again. Mom, can you put this on Dad too? Sean asked once again. Both Haley and Brad immediately looked at each other. She felt excitement bursting from within her at the thought of seeing her husband wearing fuzzy cat ears. Brad felt like they were playing a prank on him. When Sean brought out Brad's headband, Haley and Brad almost choked. This one was pink. Haley's reaction was due to surprise and excitement, but Brad's was mostly due to shock. He couldn't believe this was what his son had picked for him. It was the most girlish headband of them all. "Isn't the pink one supposed to be for your mom?" he asked hopefully. His son firmly shook his head. "No, it's yours, Dad." Sean turned to Haley. "I think this one suits him best. Right, Mom?" he replied. Haley nodded enthusiastically before she took the headband and moved closer toward Brad. She couldn't wait to put it on him. Suddenly, Brad's heartbeat began to accelerate. For some reason, wearing pink cat ears was a great challenge for him. He retreated from Haley anxiously. He may have been the most feared and renowned person in the business world, but he wasn't ready to wear fuzzy pink ears. "Dad, don't be shy and let Mom put it on you." Sean's voice made Brad come to his senses. He didn't need to be worried about some cat ears. Hearing his son's plea made his reluctance disappear. "Don't be shy, okay? This will definitely look good on you," Haley coaxed as she gently put the headband on his head. Brad felt a hot feeling rush into his cheeks. He rubbed the back of his neck to ease his embarrassment. Haley couldn't believe what she was seeing. She giggled when she saw Brad blush. "He's so cute," she squealed. "I can barely handle this." She fell in a daze as she stared at her blushing husband. Seeing him humble himself by wearing a pair of pink ears, chosen by their son, was enough to melt her heart. Episode 304, Grand Entrance. The family finally reached the amusement park. Sean was smiling excitedly on the entire drive as he interacted with his parents. Haley looked at the two cute boys beside her and felt like she was in a dream. She kept hugging her son as her eyes were locked on her husband. He was still wearing his pink cat ears, but he was staring out the window, looking a little uncomfortable. Haley giggled as she watched him being so silent. From time to time, he would glance at her as though he wanted to say something, yet he seemed to be restraining himself. "We're here!" Sean exclaimed as soon as they stopped. He stepped out of the car holding his mother's hand. When they stood in front of the park's entrance, every head turned toward them, attracting numerous looks of admiration. "Gosh, look at them. Are they celebrities?" "I don't think so. Never seen them before. But yeah, that lady is pretty. She's an absolute goddess." "And look at that little boy. God, who is he? Is he a prince?" "Are they here for a magazine photo shoot?" "Don't you think their eyes look similar? I think they're related." "Yeah, I think so too. Even though that lady looks so young. Maybe they're mother and son." "Let me take a photo. They're definitely not regular people." "But look at their clothes. They're just wearing t-shirts and jeans." "Are you an idiot? Some billionaires wear ordinary clothes nowadays. They don't want to attract too much attention. Are you saying that the people who just stepped out of that fancy car are ordinary?" "Well, now that you mention it, that car is amazing. Gosh, I wonder who they are." As the people around the family continued to murmur and gossip, Haley and Sean stared at each other because Brad was still inside the car. "Wait here, Mommy," Sean said. When Haley nodded, the boy ran back into the car to get his father. "Dad, let's go. Why are you taking so long?" he said. Inside the car, Brad reached out his hand and gently pinched his son's cheek. "You asked me to give you today so that you could spend quality time with your mom before you give her to me, remember?" Brad replied. "I'm wondering why you want me to join you. Are you planning something?" he asked. Sean puffed his cheeks. He was disappointed that he couldn't hide anything from his father. "Dad, let's go. Don't ask any questions. Just come out," he pleaded. He got back out of the car hastily, causing Brad to wonder. When Sean had asked him to give him one more day, Brad had assumed he wanted to spend some time alone with his mother. But to his surprise, he wanted Brad to come as well. This must mean that he was planning something. Brad decided to go with the flow and see what his son was up to. but because of the pink, fluffy cat ears on his head, he started to feel like he was being pressured by his son. He never would have worn them if it hadn't seemed important to his family. What he really wanted to do was throw them on the ground and stomp them out of existence.
Ken, how do I look?
Brad asked seriously. Ken wanted to pretend like he didn't hear the question, but eventually he cleared his throat and responded.
You always look good, boss,
the man replied. He avoided eye contact, and Brad was obviously not pleased with his answer at all.
I'm asking about this thing on my head,
Brad asked again. Ken fell silent for a long while.
Well, I don't think anyone will recognize you,
Ken finally said.
You don't have to worry. I suggest you change your hairstyle a bit. Like, make it a bit messy so that it looks different from your normal look?
He tried to explain, but Brad could only scratch the back of his neck. Meanwhile, Sean was getting impatient, waiting for his father to come out, so he gestured to his mother to bend down so he could whisper something to her.
Mom, Dad is being shy. I don't think he likes the headband I bought for him,
he whispered as he pouted. Looking at her son's disappointed face, Haley hugged the boy and caressed his back. Don't worry, I'm sure he's just sulking. Wait here, okay? She said. She walked around the car. The driver stepped out as soon as he saw her open the car door beside Brad. Brad was about to open the door. He was surprised when Haley did it for him. He raised his head and looked at her. She quickly leaned down and grabbed his wrist. It's okay, Brad. The headband doesn't look weird on you. It's really cute, I promise, she said, trying to reassure him. Brad felt pleased. He didn't really care what anyone else thought or said. He only cared about her opinion. Haley actually thought that Brad was just being shy, and she could understand why. She knew the kind of person he was. She knew how private he liked to be in public and how important it was that he maintained his reputation as a well-respected business person. It had crossed her mind to ask Sean to spare his father from wearing the cat ears because she actually didn't want other people to see Brad's cute and sensitive side. She wanted it all for herself. However, when Sean pouted with disappointment, she decided against it. She just couldn't bear to make her son unhappy. All she could do was try her best to coax him into submission. I don't think people will recognize you, she reasoned. How about we mess up your hair a bit? She raised her hands. Is that okay? She asked again.
I don't mind,
he replied with a smile, and Haley removed his headband. She started gently ruffling his hair using her fingers, and Brad loved it. He really liked the way she massaged his head. He closed his eyes and savored her touch. After a while, Haley tilted her head and stared at Brad. His messy bangs somehow made him look even more gorgeous, and she bit her lip as she gazed at him. She thought he really was too attractive. She wanted to mess up his hair so he wasn't recognizable. But now, he was even more eye-catching. She was sure that people wouldn't be able to tell that this man was actually the same rich business person that always looked so somber and professional. Haley put the pink cat ears back on his head, and as expected, he looked a bit too cute for his own good. She instinctively pinched both of his cheeks. Watching her look at him with such admiration made Brad feel quite happy again.
How is it?
He asked. Oh, you're so cute, she exclaimed with eyes filled with love. Brad remembered what Sean had said about Haley not being able to resist anything cute. It turns out the boy was right. Brad smiled, and his hand reached up to touch Haley's cheek.
I won't mind wearing the cat ears if...
He paused for a moment.
If you give me a kiss.
Haley didn't know what to say to her charming husband. She knew that Sean was waiting for them, but she also knew that she couldn't resist this cute creature in front of her. She quickly made up her mind. She gave him a very brief kiss on the lips, but as soon as she pulled away, Brad's hand quickly slipped around the back of her neck, and he pulled her in again. Brad kissed her passionately. Episode 305. Can't keep him waiting. Brad didn't stop kissing Haley. He kissed her like he never wanted to let her go. He simply couldn't get enough. Being with her, feeling her soft lips and her warm mouth, was like a drug. He was addicted. Haley felt like she was floating in the sky. She couldn't resist this man, and before she knew it, she was eagerly returning his kisses. They continued kissing passionately until they finally paused to catch their breath. Brad gazed at her and was about to kiss her again when she moved, and his forehead bumped into hers.
"Brad, Sean is waiting for us,"
she said as she panted. But Brad still didn't let go of her. His hand remained at the back of her neck. "Just once more," he whispered as he gazed at her with a look that was both cute and sexy. It was almost enough to break what little resistance she had left, and she blushed intensely as she fell speechless. She couldn't believe how insatiable he could be, but their son was waiting for them, and she knew that if she granted his request, she wouldn't be able to pull away once they started to kiss again. Knowing Brad, one more kiss would surely be a long one. While she was still contemplating her options, he suddenly moved and kissed her lower lip. He sucked it lightly, causing her head to spin. Then he pulled away and gave her a quick kiss on the cheek before he let her go. Haley was frozen with shock, but Brad was smiling as though he very much enjoyed seeing her look so flustered. She finally realized that he was definitely trying to tease her. She wasn't sure how to react to her charming husband's shameless behavior. All she could do was sigh and quickly step out of the car, looking as red as a tomato. She didn't even notice that she accidentally closed the car's door with a loud bang. Her unexpected reaction stunned Brad. This was the first time he had ever seen her slam the car door on him. He was completely thrown off and could only speculate that she was upset with him. He never meant to displease her. Greatly troubled and worried, Brad hastily stepped out of the car. He didn't even notice how the people around them gasped. Everyone was blown away by this gorgeous man with fuzzy cat ears on his head. He immediately walked toward his wife and son. When Haley avoided his gaze, he felt like he had been punched in the stomach. Sean noticed his father's gloomy state and assumed it was because he had made him wear the pink cat ears. He walked up to him and tugged on his shirt. Brad crouched down.
"Dad, I never thought that you were a shy person,"
Sean whispered. Brad was only worried about Haley getting mad, so he swooped Sean up and carried him in his arms. "I think your mother is upset with me," he whispered back to his son. Sean looked at him with a puzzled expression.
"What did you do to upset her, Dad?"
he asked, looking extremely displeased. "I'm not sure why, but I think she doesn't like me right now." He couldn't tell his young son that he had made his mom flustered by kissing her, so he just asked if he could have some time later to make her feel better. He couldn't endure it if she were to stay mad at him for too long. He wanted to settle it as soon as possible.
"Wasn't she fine just now?" Sean asked. "She even said you looked cute."
Brad nodded and looked at Haley's back as Sean talked. "I think cuteness isn't enough. So, can you let me talk privately with her? I promise I will solve this quickly," Brad said. Sean nodded like he was ready to help his father in whatever way he could.
"Got it, Dad. Put me down first,"
he replied. Brad placed him on the ground, and Sean grabbed his hand and dragged him over to his Haley.
"Mommy,"
he called out. Haley, who finally recovered from Brad's affectionate advances, looked at her son. The boy was reaching out his hand, and she immediately took it before he led his parents into the amusement park. The family of three, wearing matching white t-shirts, blue jeans, and colorful cat ears, were all holding each other's hands as they walked proudly toward the entrance. Everyone else's attention all turned to this beautiful family. They looked like supermodels walking down a runway. Episode 306, Melting. The day was bright and lively. The family enjoyed simply roaming around the park like anyone else. They tried a few of the rides that Sean had chosen, and it was a wonderful experience. Brad didn't care much for the entertainment. He was just enjoying the sight of his wife and son happily spending time together. He was overjoyed. He could finally see the brightness and energy coming back into Haley's eyes. He had been longing to see her smile and laugh again. He had missed that. Her laughter was like the sun warming his usual cold and frozen world. Brad wanted to make sure she would still be smiling on their wedding day. That was why he was a bit troubled about what had happened in the car earlier. He knew that now wasn't the right time to upset her, and yet he felt like he had acted carelessly. It was making him mad at himself. The entire time, Brad's gaze stayed locked on Haley. Even bystanders noticed that he seemed to only have eyes for her. Other women who saw the couple were dying with jealousy. Many people couldn't resist taking photos of this excessively adorable and gorgeous family. Finally, they decided to take a rest on a bench under a beautiful weeping willow. Brad was eagerly waiting for Sean to initiate his plan. He had promised to give them some privacy, so Brad could finally settle the trouble he had caused. He wanted to snatch Haley away for a few minutes, but he had already promised his son that he would not interrupt his plans. He had no choice but to wait. Brad was wondering if Haley might still be upset with him. He didn't realize that Haley was only avoiding his gaze because she was afraid she would never want to look away afterward. She knew she needed to give her son some attention, too. After Brad had finished talking to Ken, Sean finally approached his father. Brad looked down at the boy, expecting him to say it was okay to take Haley away. However, Sean had another idea.
Dad, you said you want to coax Mommy, right?
He asked.
She said she likes ice cream, so you should go buy some for us.
As usual, Brad was the third wheel. He ruffled his son's hair before he looked at Haley sitting on the bench. Okay, I'll go. But don't you forget about what we talked about, okay? Brad replied. Sean just smiled as he walked back to his mother. Brad was walking down the busy sidewalk when a few brazen women approached him. It looked like they worked for the park, and they were all incredibly attractive. They kept looking at him while they whispered to each other and giggled.
Hello, gorgeous. What are you looking for? Do you need help?
One of the women asked seductively. She was trying her best to flirt with him. Her friend pulled her away as she loudly called out to Brad again.
You're so handsome. Words can't describe it. My God, you look like you could be a celebrity. What's your name?
She broke free from the hand of her friend and strutted up to Brad.
Come on, handsome man. Don't be shy. Tell me your name. I can help you look.
Before the woman could finish her proposition, Brad turned and glared at her coldly. I don't need your help, he replied with a grim expression. He left the ladies frozen in place, looking at each other with disbelief. Their eyes followed the gorgeous man as he walked away. He walked up to another employee and asked for directions. The three women all gasped. Is he serious? One of them said with disbelief. He ignored us and asked him for help. He must be blind if he doesn't want to talk to us. Another woman nodded to her friends. He probably doesn't like girls. The women gossiped amongst themselves. Brad walked down the sidewalk and made his way to a cafe. A man approached him. He seemed to be undercover. Boss, let me help you buy the ice cream, he offered politely, but Brad declined. No, I'll buy it myself, he said. He looked so determined that the man was taken aback. He had been one of Brad's special bodyguards for over 5 years now, and he had never seen his boss willingly go and buy something for himself. He knew that Brad usually had his second in command, Tyler, do these types of errands for him. Moreover, he was positive that Brad had no experience buying anything in this kind of food store. But boss, this is not a Michelin star restaurant. There are no well-trained waiters in there to serve you. He anxiously tried to reason with Brad, but he still didn't agree. This is for my wife and child, so I'll buy it myself. Thank you, Brad said as he entered the store. His bodyguard waited a minute before secretly following him. Inside the store, Brad was surprised by the long line of people buying ice cream. The bodyguard was watching from the corner. He almost wanted to laugh because of Brad's determined expression. He was acting like buying ice cream was such an honorable and important task that he needed to accomplish it at all costs. Haley and Sean were cuddling on the bench, talking when Brad returned from his errand. Haley was startled when she saw him walking closer to them, with 2 ice cream cones in his hands. He looked unbelievably cute wearing his pink cat ears with his messy jet black hair. He seemed to be quite proud of what he had accomplished, and she found him irresistible. Sean ran up to his father and took his ice cream. He winked meaningfully at his dad before he turned to his mother.
Mommy, I'm going to go buy something with Uncle Ken. I'll be back later, he said.
After Haley gave her approval, Sean ran toward Ken, and they left. As soon as Brad and Haley were alone, Brad smiled and squatted down in front of her, leaning his elbow on top of his knee as he gazed at her. "Here's your ice cream," he said in a deep, sexy voice. Haley bit her lip to stop her mouth from hanging open. "Thank you," she replied as she took the cone from his hand. She was seriously distracted by her handsome husband, but her ice cream was starting to melt. When she finally noticed it, she hastily licked it. "Is it good?" Brad asked, and Haley nodded enthusiastically. "Can you come up here and have a seat? I want to talk to you," she said, but he remained squatting in front of her and didn't move. His expression turned quite gloomy, causing Haley to feel alarmed. She was about to ask what was wrong when he spoke first. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you," he said in a quiet voice. Haley just blinked. "Why are you saying sorry? What do you mean by upset me?" she asked with a clueless expression. "You mean you're not mad at me?" he exclaimed, and Haley became even more confused. "Why would I be mad at you?" she asked. Brad felt like a giant weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He bowed his head and rubbed the back of his neck before he looked up again. "You slammed the door after I kissed you in the car, and you kept avoiding my gaze. So I thought you were upset." His eyes wandered nervously as he tried to explain. Suddenly, Haley pinched his cheeks hard before she bent down and kissed his forehead. When she leaned back and gazed at him gently, he realized that he had misunderstood her. "I was flustered, so I guess I failed to control my strength. And I was avoiding looking at you because you just look too cute," she explained. Brad was surprised and extremely happy. "Does this mean that she liked my advances?" he wondered before he decided to confirm his suspicions. "I thought my kisses made you mad," he said. Haley shook her head. "No, it's not like—" Brad cut her off. "You mean you like it?" Brad asked. Haley blushed and nodded. She didn't want him to feel like he had to apologize again. Her nod caused a great wave of relief to wash over him. He wrapped his arms around her in a tight embrace. "I am sorry for the misunderstanding," she said as she caressed his head. "No, you don't have to apologize," he answered softly. "It's my mistake. I just wanted to ask you if I'm making you feel uncomfortable with my advances." He pulled away and looked intently into Haley's eyes. She felt flustered again. It doesn't make me feel uncomfortable, as long as Sean isn't around," she replied shyly. Brad's eyes sparkled with delight. He was so excited that he immediately moved to kiss her when suddenly she screamed. Brad looked down, following Haley's gaze to see what the matter was. Melted ice cream was starting to flow down over her fingers. He quickly grabbed her wrist, and Haley gasped as he started licking her hand. Haley was slow to react, but then she remembered Brad's aversion to cold food. "Brad, it's all right. I'll go wash." "You shouldn't. It's cold." She was stammering as she talked, but he didn't stop. "It's okay. It's not cold. Your skin has warmed it up," he said. He continued licking her hand, and Haley's senses exploded with feelings of intense affection. Episode 307, Different Appetites. Haley's brain started swirling, and she couldn't think straight due to Brad's advances. She could have easily stopped him, but watching him lick her hand while wearing a pair of pink fuzzy cat ears was almost too much to handle. Haley could feel the blood rushing to her cheeks. The feeling of his warm tongue brushing against her skin gave her a tingling sensation. She tried to clear her head before she managed to speak.
Brad, it's all right. Sean might come back at any minute,
she uttered apprehensively. Thankfully, Brad immediately stopped. He let go of her wrist, and she hastily lifted her ice cream and licked it before it could melt again. She paused when she noticed that Brad hadn't moved at all. He remained rooted on the ground and was looking up at her. His line of sight was fixed on the ice cream in her mouth. It made Haley feel bad that she was the only one eating. She didn't realize that Brad wasn't craving the ice cream. He was looking at her lips.
I'll go buy something for you to eat,
she said. She was about to stand when Brad got up to stop her. No need. I'm fine. This park doesn't sell what I really desire, he said. Haley didn't quite understand. What I want is warm ice cream, he added, and she blinked. Before Haley could begin to process what he had just said, Brad grabbed her hand that was holding the ice cream and touched it to her lips. Haley's eyes widened. This reminded her of 5 years ago. Just as she was starting to reminisce, Brad pressed his lips against hers. The kiss was deep and tasted sweet, like the warm ice cream. It was so passionate that it made Haley forget about what she was holding. Brad was very skillful. The way he moved his tongue with hers and the way he delved into her mouth overwhelmed her. She was completely mesmerized and under his control. By the time their lips parted, the two of them were breathing heavily as they gazed lovingly at each other. Their magical moment was interrupted when Sean's voice suddenly rang out. Haley immediately stiffened and pushed Brad away.
Mommy!
The boy called out to her. In a flash, Haley stepped away from Brad and immediately looked at her son coming toward her. She quickly bent down as he ran up.
I'm back. I bought this for you, Mommy, he said sweetly.
He looked happy as he showed her a cute yellow hair clip.
Wow,
she said as she embraced her son.
Thank you. My baby is so generous,
she said. Sean immediately asked her if he could put it on her. She agreed, and while he was putting it in her hair, Brad walked closer to them.
Mommy, it looks so cute on you,
Sean exclaimed. Haley thanked him as she hugged him again. Brad cleared his throat to get their attention. Your ice cream is melting, he said, and they all looked at the liquefied ice cream in Haley's hand.
Mommy, your hand,
Sean squealed, and Haley just patted his head. It's fine, sweetie. I'll go wash, okay? Wait for me. I'll be right back, she explained. When Sean nodded, she immediately walked away. I'll go with your mom. You wait with your Uncle Ken, okay? Brad said. Sean tugged at his shirt and he stopped. What is it? Brad asked. Sean just smiled.
Dad, the sun is about to set. I want to ride that huge Ferris wheel. Uncle Ken and I will go there first. Go get Mommy. We will wait for you there,
he said. Brad nodded his head as he ruffled his son's hair and then took off after Haley. Brad and Haley finally arrived at the Ferris wheel. They walked hand in hand, wearing matching cat ears as they looked for their son. This Ferris wheel was infamous. It was the tallest one in the whole country. Sean was waving his arms so his parents could easily find him. Upon reaching them, Haley took Sean from Ken's arms.
Mommy, let's ride this one,
Sean said, and Haley agreed. But when it was their turn to get on the ride, Sean spoke up again.
Mommy, me and Uncle Ken will wait here,
he said. Haley was confused. Brad smiled and secretly winked at his son. Good boy, Brad thought, feeling extremely proud. He wasn't surprised. When Sean told them to come to the Ferris wheel, he had expected this. After Sean convinced his mother, Haley kissed Sean's forehead before giving him to his father. Brad carried Sean to Ken.
Daddy, you should kiss Mommy when you reach the top, okay? Remember,
Only when you reach the very top, the boy said firmly. His eyes were strict, as though he was ready to punish his own father if he disobeyed. Brad chuckled softly. Rest assured, I will, Brad replied, kissing Sean's forehead before giving him to Ken. Daddy, do your best, he encouraged. The boy and his father bumped their fists together before Brad turned back to Haley. As the Ferris wheel started moving, Ken spoke. Where did you get this idea? He asked Sean. It was Auntie Amy's idea. When she brought me here before, she said that when a girl and a boy kiss at the very top of this Ferris wheel, they will be together forever, he explained. Ken nodded his head slowly as he listened. I'm surprised that you actually believe that, he said. He knew how smart the boy was, so he was surprised to hear him talk about superstitions. Lately, Sean had been questioning everything anyone told him. I don't know if it's true or not, but it can't hurt. Do you think this will be good enough? Sean asked with a faintly worried look in his eye. Ken smiled and nodded. Don't worry, I'm sure your mom and dad are incredibly happy. This is not simply good. This is great. Ken replied as he watched the look on Sean's face improve drastically. Anyway, I already contacted the park's director, Ken added with a grin. Sean's eyes sparkled. Did they agree? He asked with excitement. Ken laughed before responding. No one would dare reject a request from you, the son of the king. They grinned at each other victoriously. Episode 308, Special Ride. Sean purposely didn't join us, right? Haley asked. Brad had to admit she was right. Yes. Why? Are you unhappy? He answered, and Haley immediately shook her head. No, it's not like that. I'm just... She paused as she gazed at Brad. Her eyes suddenly filled with emotion as though she was having mixed feelings, both extreme happiness and also a faint feeling of sadness. Brad was about to ask what was wrong when she wrapped her arms around his neck and gently bumped her forehead onto his. Brad, our son is extremely sweet and clever. He's so considerate and kind. He's the cutest thing in the universe. She paused, then said, Thank you. Thank you for raising him so well. He has grown up right, even without having me around. She bit her lip hard, as though she was having a tough time trying to express what she was feeling. Her eyes were welling with tears, and Brad just held her in a warm embrace. He could understand why she was feeling sentimental. It is true. He has grown up sweet, clever, considerate, kind, and cute, because he's your son. He inherited your qualities. He replied gently, but Haley shook her head. No. He grew up well because he had you. You nurtured him so well. That's why I'm so thankful. I'm so very much relieved that you are his father. You don't know how glad I am, she said as she gripped him hard. Brad caressed her head down to her back. In truth, Brad hadn't realized that Sean had grown up so well. He'd always been remarkably busy, and he barely had time to spend with his son. He always felt anxious that he was not doing enough as a father. That was why it was such an amazing feeling for him to hear what she said, even though he still believed Sean was such a great kid because Haley was his mom. Thank you. I'm really glad to hear that, Brad replied with a smile. Haley pulled away from his embrace. You are the best father in the world, she said as she looked at him with a twinkling in her eyes that caused Brad to smile proudly. Every affirmation from his wife felt like a great achievement for him. Then, can I ask you for a reward? Brad asked mischievously, and Haley looked at him curiously. What kind of reward do you want? She replied, and Brad's lips curved into a smile again. He pulled her close to him and made her sit down on his lap as he answered. I want you to reward me with the best kiss you can give, he said, causing her to blush intensely. Are you trying to evaluate my kissing skills? She retorted. I have also improved, you know. She puffed up her cheeks and pouted her lips when she saw the mischievous smile on his face. Brad started laughing at her cute expression, and Haley immediately fell into a daze as she stared at her handsome husband. Noticing her admiration, Brad leaned in and playfully bit her lip before pinching her cheek gently. He was about to tease her again when Haley spoke first. Brad, are you always so lighthearted in front of everyone now? She asked. Brad looked at her curiously before he answered. You're the only reason I'm like this. So why would I do it in front of others? He replied honestly, and Haley's face brightened. Can I be greedy? She asked. I only want you to be like this in front of our son and me, she said with a firm voice. For everyone else, you can be cold and serious. I didn't know my wife had the tendency to be so possessive, he replied, but his heart was struck with a feeling of sadness when he uttered the word wife. Thankfully, he managed to recover in the blink of an eye, consoling himself that soon she would be his legal wife again. Don't worry, no one can make me laugh like this but you, he continued. Haley reached out to grab Brad's face and kiss him when he suddenly stopped her. Can you wait for a bit? He asked. Our son actually requested that we only kiss when we reach the very top. Haley was surprised. He said that? She asked in disbelief, and Brad nodded. He heard some story about it bringing good luck or something, he replied. Haley gasped. Does that mean we can only kiss while we're at the top? She asked with a wink. I don't think so. Before Brad could finish, Haley's lips suddenly slammed into his. It wasn't just her desire to kiss him, though. It was because the Ferris wheel had suddenly stopped moving as soon as they reached the top. It stopped, Haley said with surprise, and Brad just smiled. Don't worry, I think I know who is behind this, he said with a grin. Just as Brad thought the moment couldn't get any better, a loud bang stole their attention. Suddenly, a romantic firework display appeared before their eyes, and they both fell into a daze. Haley was so surprised and mesmerized by the magical view that her mouth hung open. Watching her reaction and gazing at the reflections of fireworks in her eyes, Brad felt incredibly happy. That little guy has outdone himself, Brad thought, thinking of Sean planning this lovely surprise. Did our boy do this? She asked without averting her gaze from the enchanting fireworks. I believe he did, he replied. She gripped his hand tighter. Brad, this is so beautiful, she mumbled, still in a daze watching the fireworks. You're so beautiful, he replied, and she finally turned to look at him. Can you give me my reward now? He asked with mock impatience. Haley blushed and took a deep breath. She got a determined look in her eyes. Since her son was trying so hard to make this a special moment, she knew she needed to try her hardest as well. Brad's heart started beating faster with anticipation. Haley raised her hands and held his face as she gazed longingly into his eyes. She closed her eyes and slowly moved her face closer to his until their lips touched. He didn't move as he let Haley take control. Her kisses were still a bit sloppy, but he could tell she was trying her best. He still found it incredibly sexy and irresistible. The way she twisted her tongue with his was almost too much for him. He had to restrain himself from taking over. It was almost impossible for him to resist her. Brad and Haley felt like they were on top of the world, throwing caution to the wind. They kissed wildly like they never had before. Brad found himself pinning her down on the seat as bursts of light and color shone all around them. It was a kiss so passionate that it seemed to be endless. They both knew that from then on, they would never be able to see another Ferris wheel without smiling. By the time Haley and Brad stepped onto the ground, Sean was already asleep. Ken had called Brad to tell him that he was taking the boy to the car.
Sean is sleeping?
Haley asked as they walked, and Brad nodded.
I guess we tired the little guy out. He was so full of energy today,
he replied. They were holding each other's hands happily as they walked through the crowd. Heads turned to look at the beautiful couple. I just need to use the restroom before we leave, Haley said. The two of them stopped outside the entrance. When Haley went inside, Brad called his bodyguard to bring him something to fix his hair. The man walked over and followed him inside. Brad removed his pink cat ears and started fixing his hair to its usual style. He had fulfilled his obligation to his family and shown his affectionate side. He wanted to please his wife in any way he could, but he had other things to take care of later.
Is it all right now?
Brad asked, and the bodyguard beside him shook his head. I'm sorry, boss, but you really have zero skill in doing your hair, he replied. Brad stared at himself in the mirror, and his face darkened with frustration. Should I go and get Miss Haley to help you? The bodyguard continued. Brad breathed deeply before he replied.
No need,
he said as he raised his hand. Then shall I call a...
No need,
Brad interrupted, turning to look at a person walking up to them. The professional has arrived, the newcomer announced, spreading his arms wide. Wow, you're really cold, he continued. I finally return after a year and you barely give me a cold glance. He complained, but Brad still didn't even turn to look at him.
Alan, shut up and come fix my hair,
Brad ordered. When Alan tilted his head to look at Brad closer, he bit his lip to stop him from bursting out laughing. Oh well, this is the only skill the heavens didn't bestow upon you. I suggest that you don't try fixing your own hair again, Brad. The entire world will experience a great disaster if they see you like this. Although I bet your wife will think it's cute.
Shut up and just quickly fix it.
Brad cut through his blabbering. Alan just laughed. After some time, the three men finally stepped out of the restroom. Brad ordered his men to keep their distance. They obeyed, leaving him standing alone, leaning against a post. It wasn't long before people started recognizing him. Hey, isn't that... Oh my God, that's the gorgeous and ultra-rich businessman, right? What are you saying? Why would that god be here? Are you blind? Are you saying that he has a doppelganger? Well, wait, maybe it's really him. But those clothes... Idiot, he might be in disguise. Oh my God, this is the first time I've seen him in person. Yeah, he's so cool. He looks spectacular, even though he's just wearing a plain t-shirt. We need to confirm if it's really him. Let's take a photo. Are you serious? Haven't you heard the rumor that he hates the media? Reporters won't dare take a photo of him without his permission. Well, it's too late, you idiot. Look, everyone is already taking photos of him. Brad was starting to get frustrated. The crowd was getting thicker, and by the time he decided to move away, he was already surrounded. People started to scream with delight, and flashes from the cameras were irritating him. The situation was getting out of control. It was as if a superstar had suddenly appeared, and everyone was in an uproar. Thankfully, Brad's bodyguards were well trained, and they were quick enough to get over to him before he could be mobbed. Brad's bodyguards had been scattered all around the park, and some were waiting outside. So suddenly, he was short of men. The incident was completely unexpected, and the guards were taken aback. They were equipped to protect him from any kind of danger, but they couldn't be violent with these innocent people, so it was hard for them to do their job effectively. Don't worry, boss. The others are on their way, a guard said as they continued pushing back the crowd. Brad was still leaning nonchalantly on the post, but his face was obviously stressed. Haley finally stepped out of the restroom, and upon seeing Brad in the middle of a wild crowd, her heart started to beat faster. She stood on the steps quietly, but she was starting to get worried. Her eyes began to blaze. She started to move toward Brad when someone suddenly stopped her. She was going to ignore them when she recognized him. Alan? She said in surprise, and he smiled. Yeah, long time no see, Miss Haley, he replied. When the screams got even louder, Haley decided to try and get to Brad, but Alan spread his arms and blocked her path. "Please stay here. Don't worry, the guards will do their job," he said, but Haley obviously wasn't convinced. Something dangerous blazed in her eyes, and her look shocked Alan. He had never seen her like this before. She was still the beautiful, angel-like lady he knew, but now there was something different in her as well. He could feel a dangerous aura exuding from her. A shiver ran down his spine when he heard what she said next. "Alan, give me a gun," she said with a fiery gaze. Episode 310, Crowd Control. Alan didn't know what to say. He never expected to hear Episode 310, Crowd Control. Alan didn't know what to say. He never expected to hear Haley say those words. He was shocked as he looked at the fierce look in her eyes. She was entirely different from the delicate young girl he had met 5 years ago. "Do you really mean that?" Alan asked, hoping to get some clarification. He wanted to believe that she was kidding, but the fire in her eyes told him otherwise. "Yes, give it to me," she repeated as her gaze turned back to Brad. "It's all right now. Everything is fine. Look, the men have already hit..." Before Alan could finish speaking, Haley's hand swiftly slipped to his waist. He was completely caught off guard. Before he knew it, the gun in his waistband was in her hand. He felt like his heart was going to jump out of his chest. He was normally ready for anything, but his boss's wife was unbelievably fast. He was even starting to doubt if she was the same lady he used to know. "I don't think you should be holding a gun here," Alan said in a state of panic. He quickly caught her wrist, afraid that she might hurt herself. "Please, give it back. It's dangerous," he pleaded, but Haley didn't relent. "Let go, Alan. I'm just going to drive those people away from my husband," she said firmly. Sweat started falling from Alan's forehead when he saw how serious she was. Haley actually had experience protecting a VIP, and she knew how dangerous this kind of situation could be. She knew that it was entirely possible for an enemy to hide in the crowd, ready to attack at any time. The thought scared Haley, and she wanted to be prepared. She would do whatever was necessary to protect her husband. "I'm sorry, I can't put you in danger," Alan replied, and he tightened his grip on her wrist. Haley was about to struggle when a sudden voice startled them both. "Alan, what are you doing?" The cold and terrifying voice caused Alan to immediately let go of Haley's wrist, leaving the gun in her hand. "Don't get the wrong idea," Alan tried to explain. "Your wife suddenly stole my gun, so I was just trying to stop her." When Brad's eyes fell onto the gun in her hand, he looked at her curiously. Haley was surprised that Brad had made it over to them so fast. She lifted her head and looked around. Numerous guards dressed in black had already surrounded them, making a human barricade. Haley was impressed. She could tell that every single one of them was extraordinarily skilled. "Haley!" Brad called out her name, and she looked back at Brad and suddenly jumped toward him, not letting go of the gun in her hand. She worriedly held his face as she spoke. "Are you all right? Are you hurt anywhere?" Brad just shook his head and chuckled softly, causing Haley to look at him with a baffled expression. He then caressed her cheeks adoringly with his thumb as he continued smiling at her. "Are you trying to save your husband in distress?" he asked playfully. She nodded without any hesitation, looking at the fading ferocity in her eyes. Brad recalled when Haley had told him that she would learn to fight proficiently, so she would be qualified to protect him if needed. Seeing how she reacted to this situation made him realize how far she had come in accomplishing her goal. He could tell she was more than capable now. "Boss, the gun is still in her hand. Don't you think she should give it back to me in case it accidentally goes off?" Alan interjected, but Brad threw him a look of objection. "Don't worry, Alan. She knows what she's doing," he replied. Alan looked at him with disbelief. "I suggest we leave this place right now," another guard standing behind Brad spoke. Brad nodded before he turned to Haley. She was still looking worried, so he smiled. "Don't worry, no one managed to get to me," he said, and she heaved a sigh of relief. "Is your life still in danger? I'm now capable of protecting you," she stated with a serious look. Brad reached his hand out gently to caress her head. "It's all right. There was never any real danger. Now my enemies are just scheming flies buzzing around the business world. You don't have to worry," he explained. But Haley's determination didn't waver. "I can destroy those little flies for you," she said, her eyes burning with conviction. She had the look of a soldier ready to protect him with her life. Brad recognized that the last 5 years she had spent in the military must have had a drastic effect on her. The spirit of a soldier was now ingrained in her. Brad realized he was falling in love with this new side of her as well. However, the thought of her being the one to protect him didn't sit right with Brad, no matter how good her skills might be. "I'm happy that you grew stronger, but I won't let you be the one to protect me," he explained. "Yes, you were a soldier, but you aren't my soldier. You're my wife, so I'll be the one to protect you and our son. Do you understand? I will never allow anything bad to happen to either of you." Haley took a moment before responding. "I understand, but if you're in danger, don't expect me to just stay still and do nothing," she replied, and Brad tried to hide his happiness. "You've become a bit stubborn, just like me," he said, and she immediately retorted, "You're the one who told me I'm not your soldier, so I don't have to obey your orders." Brad was at a loss for words as he raised his hand and rubbed the back of his neck before he could speak. "It's not an order, but you're still willing to listen, right?" he asked. This time, Haley was the one who was lost for words, causing Brad to smile kindly. "Okay, let's get out of here. But give the gun to me first. It would be bad if anyone saw you holding a gun in public," Brad continued, and Haley handed it over. "Good girl," Brad thought with relief. He was ecstatic that his wife still listened to him once in a while. What they didn't realize was that amidst this chaos, there was a man dressed in a black jacket and cap, witnessing the whole situation, looking at them with dark, cold killer eyes. Episode 311, Haley and Amy Reunited. Haley was waiting for Brad inside a luxury black car parked in front of the Clark International Corporation building, one of the tallest buildings in the country. Sean was sleeping soundly in her arms as she gazed up at the majestic skyscraper, now considered a major city landmark because of its cutting-edge architectural design. A short while ago, Brad had asked her to give him 30 minutes to deal with an important matter. And Haley had simply nodded her head in agreement, even though he hadn't needed to ask her permission. Haley knew that he was a businessman, and she understood he was very busy. But what she hadn't realized was that he was actually the CEO of one of the largest corporations in the country, and one of the top 100 corporations in the world. That is, not until their car had stopped in front of the Clark International Corporation building, and she had watched with astonishment as her husband was greeted like a king at the door and escorted inside. Haley had been away on a mission for a year, and she hadn't heard any news about Brad's business interest. Before she had left to undertake her mission, the media had been full of the scandal involving the former business tycoon Brandon Rockman and his mistress Rachel Hughes, and the reemergence of another giant of industry had been overshadowed. The Clark International Corporation had been a hugely successful business in the past, but had been considered a dark horse in the eyes of the public for some unknown reason and had been rarely discussed in the media. Then the business had become successful again after the appointment of a new CEO simply known as Mr. Clark, who, prior to Haley's departure, had never once appeared in public. During Haley's year-long absence, Brad had been finally revealed as the mysterious CEO. He had become known as a captain of industry and had earned respect and admiration throughout the business world. Since Haley had returned from her mission and been reunited with Brad, they hadn't had the opportunity to discuss his new position in the corporation. Brad hadn't even realized that she wasn't aware of this development. Waiting in the car outside the imposing building, Haley had used her cell phone to search the internet and had been able to confirm all this information online. But deep down, she wasn't overly surprised, as she had always believed Brad was no ordinary man and that he was even more capable than she could ever imagine. Gazing up at the towering building, Haley realized that she was no longer the only one who saw Brad as a king-like figure anymore, because he had now been revealed as a great man in everyone's eyes. He was someone who held unprecedented power that few would dare challenge. As she thought about it, Haley felt that the distance between her and Brad had widened drastically. It was as if a light that had once been so close was now soaring above the heavens beyond reach. But the determined light in Haley's eyes didn't waver. Instead, rays of intense ferocity shone from those eyes, and she felt as though she were a sleeping phoenix waiting to rise and soar to new heights, or a warrior fighting for her rightful place at her king's side. She had been so deeply immersed in her thoughts that she hadn't noticed Brad had returned to the car until she heard him close the door behind him. "You were quick," she said as he settled down beside her. "I promised I would only be 30 minutes, he said as he smiled, and then he reached over to pick up his son. Amy and Tyler were already waiting at the Clark residence. Tyler hadn't mentioned that Haley had returned, and so as soon as Brad's luxury black car arrived and the car door opened, Amy narrowed her eyes in suspicion. From where she was standing at the entrance to the house, Amy could see that one of the people sitting in the car was definitely a woman wearing jeans, and it made her blood boil. That stone-cold man, Brad, has a woman with him, she thought angrily. "Tyler, don't tell me that brother of yours has already found someone new," she asked in disbelief. Yeah, I guess he finally found his woman," Tyler replied casually, and Amy began to fume with rage. "What? Are you serious? What about Haley?" Amy suddenly became emotional as she grabbed Tyler by his shoulders and started to shake him. "Why did you let him find another woman? Didn't I tell you to keep an eye on him? What will we do if Haley comes back and finds out that her husband is now with someone else? Well, I'm going to destroy that new relationship. I will not allow anyone to take Haley's place," she continued with fury in her eyes and distress in her voice. Tyler sighed. "When did you become their relationship guardian?" he asked as he raised his hand to flick her forehead. Suddenly a voice came from behind. "Amy, is that really you?" Haley asked. Amy turned around slowly until she was facing her friend, and her eyes widened in astonishment. "Tyler, can you flick me? I think I'm dreaming," she uttered without averting her gaze. Tyler bent his head as though he was about to whisper something in her ear, shielding her face from Haley's view. But instead of saying anything, he bit Amy's earlobe, and she jolted in pain. She reacted by punching Tyler weakly on the jaw, and he smirked. Tyler figured he was safe from any violent retaliation from Amy, while Brad was looking on, and that with Haley here, he would be even safer. And it turned out he was right. When Amy realized it was Haley, her eyes filled with tears, and she threw her arms around her friend. "Haley, it is you," she exclaimed, and Haley embraced her. "Yes, of course, it's me," she answered quietly, and Amy began to cry. "Where the hell have you been?" she asked, and apologies spilled from Haley's mouth. Then Sean, who had been sleeping in Ken's arm, suddenly shouted, "Mommy!" and Haley ran over to him. "Baby, are you all right?" she asked with worry etched on her face. Her son opened his eyes, reached out to give his mom a sleepy hug, and then fell back to sleep. Haley took Sean from Ken and then walked over to Amy. "I'm just going to put Sean to bed," she said, and Amy nodded. "I'll come with you," she said, but just as the two friends were about to enter the mansion, Tyler caught Amy's arm to stop her. He leaned in and whispered in her ear, "Brad has something to tell you." Amy stiffened. Ever since Brad had reprimanded her 2 years back regarding Sean, Amy had sworn she would never speak to him alone again. She couldn't tolerate Brad's domineering manner and icy demeanor, so she had always refused to speak to him unless Tyler was around. Why? What does the Ice King want from me? Can't you just tell me so I can be with Haley now? Amy asked. This is important. It's about Haley, he explained, and he led Amy over to the car where Brad was waiting. Amy held on to Tyler as Brad described Haley's condition, and she gasped when she heard what he told her. I believe you could help her a great deal too. For that reason, I would like you to stay in the country for a while. Brad asked in a tone that Amy had never heard him use before, and her grip on Tyler loosened a little. Okay, I would definitely want to stay and help, even if you hadn't asked me to, she replied. Brad said, good, before he left to take a call from the office. Do you have any idea how we can help her? Tyler asked. Amy thought just for a moment, before a little smile appeared on her face. I think I have an idea, she said as she narrowed her eyes. That's good, although I hope it's not one of your crazy, risque schemes, Tyler replied as he lazily leaned back on the car, and Amy just smiled again. Don't worry, this time it's something different from my usual approach. But we have to include that Ice King brother of yours, she said with a mischievous smile. Tyler became alarmed when he heard her use the word we. Don't include me. Who knows what kind of trouble you'll cause again? Tyler began, but he was interrupted when Amy pressed her finger to his lips as she leaned on him before she spoke again. Mr. Beauty, I need you. For the sake of Haley and your brother, Brad the Great, we have to work together. Don't worry. This'll be fun, she assured him. Episode 312, Amy's Plan. When Amy had said that it would be fun, Tyler had raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. While he wanted Haley to get better as quickly as possible, he couldn't deny that he wanted to see just what crazy idea his fiancée had come up with this time. He was curious to know if she had really meant it when she had said it wasn't something too risque. Okay, I get it. You can back off now, Tyler said. But Amy just smiled as she leaned her body even closer against him. Why? What are you doing? Don't you want to be this close to me? She asked, her eyes glistening, and Tyler knew she was teasing him again. Brad had turned his back and was still on the phone. Tyler glanced over to him and then smiled at Amy before he slipped his hands around her waist and pulled her closer to him. Amy gasped in surprise. She liked to tease Tyler when he was in Brad's presence because he usually became uncomfortable, as he always behaved well in front of his brother. He usually never answers back when his brother is around. What's happened? She wondered. Without another word, and before Amy had a chance to react, Tyler tilted his head to one side, and he softly kissed the side of her neck. She jolted as his warm lips brushed softly against her skin. What are you doing? Your brother is right there, she said as she pressed her hands against his chest and tried to push him away. But then she looked up and saw the serious expression on his face as he gazed deep into her eyes. So what? He replied casually, and Amy's mouth dropped open in disbelief. She was surprised, not because of his words, but because of the sudden change she had seen in his eyes. Although, for the more than 5 years that this man had been her so-called fiancé, she had witnessed this look more than once. She just had a feeling that there was more to this mischievous man than she first thought. When she saw the cold, deep, and unfathomable look on his face, he became a mystery she felt she would never understand. She had tried to ignore it, but this wild, almost savage look in his eyes had frightened her sometimes, even if it had just appeared for a moment. Amy knew that behind his mischievous and easygoing facade, there was something that he was hiding from her. She knew that he would never reveal everything or completely open up to her. It frustrated her that she was excluded. She already understood what part they played in each other's lives, Their relationship hadn't changed for more than 5 years. Yet, her feelings toward him had slowly grown. Amy had attempted to keep her distance in the knowledge that their engagement was based on a simple agreement. She hadn't wanted to develop deeper feelings for him. They had flirted with each other like teenagers every time they met and treated the intimacy between them as if it were nothing more than a game. But they had no real relationship. They were a couple in name only, playing games with each other. They had no meaningful conversations, made no declarations of love, and had no idea of what they really had between them. But Amy couldn't deny that she was having fun. She didn't dislike this kind of easygoing relationship. She had fun whenever she was with Tyler, and she loved teasing him, making him flustered, and causing him trouble in any way she could. He made her boring life more exciting. But she didn't know how long they would remain like this. Would they just stay like this forever? But you used to be so well behaved if your brother was around, Amy said, and in an instant, the wild look was gone, and once more, the mischievous and playful Tyler was back. It was truly as if two different personalities lived within the same body. That's why you're trying to take this opportunity to tease me? Too bad, Miss Fake Inappropriate. Not anymore, he continued. Somehow, Amy wasn't too pleased with the naughty look in his eyes, and hearing him say the words, fake inappropriate, annoyed her too. She just didn't want to lose against this man. Amy then bit her lip hard as she narrowed her eyes, and then before Tyler knew what was happening, she slammed her lips onto his neck and began to suck as hard as she could. Tyler's eyes widened with shock. He knew that if she sucked hard enough, it would definitely leave a mark. Will you stop? Tyler shouted as he held her by the shoulders to try to pull her away when he saw Brad looking at them with a blank expression. Stop it. Brad's back, Tyler whispered to Amy, and her lips immediately left his skin. But instead of backing off quietly, she started to cry. Tyler's eyes widened again, but before he could say a word, Amy turned toward Brad. I'm sorry, Mr. Clark, she said between sobs. I want to go home now, she said as she wiped tears from her face. Brad's face darkened as he heard these words, and he looked at Tyler accusingly. What the hell did he do now? Brad thought irritably. Tyler was speechless. Why do you want to leave? Brad asked coldly. Amy subconsciously retreated a little toward Tyler. Because Tyler is bullying me. I don't think he wants me here, she said in a small voice. Tyler's mouth dropped open and his eyes widened in shock. This woman is just too much. She's already given me a hickey and still she's not satisfied? What is it? Does she have a grudge against me or something? Tyler wondered in amazement. But he stayed silent as he felt as though Brad's sharp and deadly gaze was aimed directly at his throat. Tyler, if you let your fiancé leave this house, you know what will happen. Settle this immediately, and then come and find me in the study, Brad ordered, and he turned and left. As soon as Brad was inside the house, Amy stopped crying. She turned to Tyler with a broad grin and laughed. How's my acting? But she didn't have a chance to finish her sentence because Tyler had grabbed her by the shoulders, pushed her inside the car, and pinned her down in the back seat. Episode 313, Tyler's Revenge. You're really enjoying causing me trouble, aren't you? Tyler asked as he held Amy's hands above her head. Amy, who had quickly recovered from Tyler's swift move and seemed to be taking it all in her stride, just smiled sweetly. What? You deserve it, she said before her eyes fell on the mark she had left on his neck. So you're still not satisfied? You wanted to get your own back after I bit your earlobe. I get that. But giving me a hickey wasn't enough for you. He asked as he looked at her in disbelief. Well, kind of, she answered coolly. Tyler just closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He hadn't been aware that the reason Amy had messed with him wasn't that he had bitten her earlobe, but because she had been getting a little frustrated with him. Fine, but I'm warning you, don't you dare say you'll leave this house again, even if it's just a joke. You understand? He warned her sternly as his grip on her hands loosened. But she didn't flinch, and instead, she grinned at him like a mischievous imp. But what if I do? She whispered playfully and seductively, teasing him again. But Tyler, who usually answered back quickly, remained silent, and his grip on her hands tightened while his eyes remained fixed on her. What's this, Mr. Beauty? Don't tell me you're now falling for my gorgeousness. But she wasn't able to finish her sentence because, to her surprise, Tyler swiftly moved to slam his lips onto the nape of her neck, and he started to suck. He was both hard and yet gentle. He made exactly the same move that Amy had made on him. He had acted so quickly that she didn't have a chance to react. And by the time she realized what was happening, Tyler had already lifted his head and was staring into her eyes. If you insist, then every time you say it, I'll just punish you like this every time, Tyler said with a glint in his eyes. But it wasn't Amy's plan to lose to Tyler at all. His face was still close to hers, and his lips were still within reach. So, the next moment, Amy lifted her face and caught his lips with hers, although she wasn't able to hold on to him because he still held her hands above her head. This unexpected move caught Tyler off guard. He had believed he could at least prevent her from being so stubborn by trying to give her a taste of her own medicine. But the situation seemed to be getting worse. While kissing him, she didn't let him breathe, and before he could pull away from her, she bit his lower lip gently and didn't let go until Tyler finally gave in and released her hands. Are you trying to rip my lip off or something? Tyler complained as she gave him a sexy smile when she had released his lip from her teeth. Now that her hands were free, she lifted one and touched his lips, as though she were trying to soothe any pain she had caused. I would never do that, okay? I wouldn't want to spoil your beautiful face. I just wanted to say, don't even think about threatening me, my dear Mr. Beauty. She replied with a fixed smile, and Tyler could only pinch the skin between his eyebrows. Damn it, this woman really is something. She's giving me a headache, he thought. He sighed and held his hand up in surrender before he helped Amy to sit up. He didn't actually dislike her being playful like this, and somehow he always found it cute if she refused to let herself lose to him. But sometimes he felt an overwhelming urge to win her over for real and make her submit to him. And that was why he could only surrender before he lost control again. At least not here and now. They were still seated inside the car when he spoke. Anyway, stop fooling around for now. Someone really needs your help. Tyler's tone changed, and he became serious and calm. Amy took a deep breath too. She understood that Haley's problem was not easy to solve, and that was why she needed to plan carefully. You guys still haven't told me what happened to her, but never mind. I'll talk to her before I let you know about the plan tomorrow. But I don't understand. Why does Brad the Great seem so impatient? Haley's only been back a few days, right? Amy asked, and Tyler sighed. Well, if only Brad hadn't lost his mind last night, he might not be in such a rush right now, he thought. Brad just badly wanted her back as soon as possible, Tyler replied before he took her by the hand. Come on, let's go. Brad is waiting inside, he continued, and Amy followed behind without argument. She knew that her best friend was her priority for now. You have to make it clear to your brother that he must go along with whatever plan I come up with, okay? She said as they walked toward the house. Don't worry, that guy will do anything and everything for his wife, Tyler replied, and Amy nodded in satisfaction. When Tyler reached the study, Brad called out to him. "So?" he muttered without looking up from his laptop. Tyler just walked into the room quietly and sat across from him. "You know that she just loves messing with me. She never meant what she said," Tyler said, and Brad lifted his face and looked at him. "Isn't it your fault that she behaves like that with you?" Brad said, and Tyler raised an eyebrow. "What? What do you even mean by that?" he asked, looking at Brad curiously. "I think it's because you're not taking your relationship with her seriously," Brad replied before he turned his gaze back to his laptop screen. Tyler just sat there, motionless and lost for words. Episode 314, The Tables Are Turned. Brad's words completely floored Tyler, and although Brad appeared focused on his work, he was actually waiting for Tyler to start talking about his relationship with his fiancée. But as usual, no words came out of Tyler's mouth. Brad knew that, unlike him, Tyler wasn't the type to speak about his feelings. So although he had been asking him about his relationship with Amy, he still wouldn't open up about it, even after all of these years. "When are you going to marry Amy?" Brad asked as he looked up from his laptop again. Once again, Tyler averted his gaze. Knowing Tyler, Brad knew that he really cared for her, even though he wouldn't admit it. Tyler, who was usually so talkative, only went quiet when Brad raised this particular topic. Brad was certain that Tyler cared about Amy more than he realized by simply looking at him. "Look, I'm here to listen. You need to learn to talk about your feelings," continued Brad, causing Tyler to finally snap. This man, does he think that everyone is like him and able to open up about everything without getting embarrassed at all? He silently complained. Hearing Brad's words made Tyler think about the good old days when Brad had been as cold as an ice cube and had been unable to talk about anything he had felt or experienced. He even remembered how he had used to be so painfully clueless and innocent that he sought advice about every tiny thing. These were memories that made Tyler feel like his life back then had been one hell of a fun, yet troublesome ride. Since Haley had disappeared, Brad's emotional intelligence had drastically improved. A huge reason for this change was surely because he had become a father, and Tyler didn't deny he was glad about it. However, he was troubled by Brad's constant prodding regarding this matter. The fact that Brad had matured and the tables had turned never ceased to surprise Tyler. After a long silence, Tyler sighed and he lifted his head lazily to stare up at the ceiling for another long while. "Brad, I suggest that you focus on yourself and your own problems for now. I won't take advice from a man who has big troubles himself," Tyler finally said, and Brad froze for a moment. His fingers had been tapping at the keyboard nonstop, but he suddenly stopped, straightened himself up, and leaned back to look at Tyler. "You're right. I really must marry her as soon as possible. But after I've settled everything with Haley, you must start listening to my advice," Brad said as he turned his head and stared out the window. Suddenly losing himself in thought again, Tyler was once again left speechless. After a while, Tyler cleared his throat. "Anyway, Amy said that you have to participate in whatever plan she has," Tyler said. Brad looked at him intently. "What plan?" he asked curiously, but Tyler just shrugged. "I don't know yet. She said she would tell us about it when the time is right," Tyler answered, and Brad leaned back again. "Tell her to do whatever she wants, as long as it'll help Haley. Tell her to start tomorrow, and I'll start my plan too," Brad said, and Tyler looked at him. "Really? What kind of plan do you have then?" he asked, with that mischievous look in his eyes once more. Brad ignored him. "And while I'm at it, I strongly suggest you start thinking seriously about your own relationship, Tyler," he said, and Tyler again fell silent. By the time Brad had finally finished his work with Tyler's help, it was 2:00 in the morning. They had finished discussing some important company matters before Brad left the room, leaving Tyler to finish off. A few minutes after that, Tyler was ready to head to his own room when he received a message from Brad. Come to Sean's room. Tyler's brows knitted into a frown as he turned and headed toward Sean's room. As soon as he stepped inside the room, he stopped as Brad put his fingers on his lips and gestured for him to move quietly. He continued to walk toward Brad without making a sound. What is it? Tyler whispered before his gaze fell onto the bed. 3 people were sleeping soundly. Sean was in the middle, while Amy and Haley had their arms wrapped around him. At first, Tyler didn't understand why Brad had called him here, but now that he was looking at them, it dawned on him what Brad was going to say. And it turned out he was absolutely right. Your woman is stealing my place, Brad said coldly, and Tyler looked at him in disbelief. After everything he had thought about Brad becoming more emotionally mature, he wondered whether it was true at all. Hey, can't you at least let them have this night? They haven't seen each other in such a long time, Tyler whispered, but Brad's expression didn't change. Tyler could see the jealousy in his eyes growing as he watched the 3 figures sleeping peacefully. As he watched him, Tyler pinched the space between his eyebrows. Ugh, damn it, this guy is still such a pain, he thought. Okay, I get it, but I don't understand how you can even be jealous of a woman, Tyler complained, and Brad's brows knit into a frown. Sean already took half of her attention away from me. I can't afford to have someone else to... Brad began, but Tyler didn't give him a chance to finish, and he cut through Brad's words. Yeah, I get it. I'll take my woman. He clamped his mouth shut when he realized what he was saying. He gazed at the sleeping woman, breathed deeply, and then walked closer to her. He carefully removed her hand from around Sean before slowly lifting her up into his arms. Her cheek was resting on his shoulder as Tyler started to carry her out of the room. Happy now? Tyler asked, and Brad nodded shamelessly without any hesitation or regret. Tyler let out a long sigh. I was wrong. This guy hasn't changed at all. When it comes to his wife, he's still the same. Oh well, never mind. I don't even know what's going on anymore. Here, so stop playing games with me or I will have to punish you again, he muttered with an obvious warning in his eyes. But still, Amy didn't flinch. Instead, she raised her hand and held Tyler's chin as she spoke, copying his every gesture. What a coincidence. I wanted to punish you too, she said, and they both fell quiet. And this time, as they gazed into each other's eyes, the atmosphere between them was drastically different than it had ever been before. Episode 316, Now You See Me. The look in Tyler's eyes was deep and unfathomable, as usual, but he never looked at her with this level of intensity before. Nor had she looked back at him with such openness. Their eyes had always been glimmering with both playfulness and lack of seriousness every time they looked at each other. But now, it seemed different. Amy was charmed by the beauty of his eyes. They were as deep as a bottomless abyss. His gorgeous nose and sexy lips were causing havoc inside her, almost causing her to lose any control she had over her emotions. Even though resisting the urge to playfully flirt with this beautiful creature was hard for her, she felt like the atmosphere between them had changed, and it was too much for her to take. The extremely rare, solemn, and earnest look in his eyes destroyed her usually unbreakable composure and self-restraint. They gazed at each other quietly and intently. It was as if they were suddenly in a staring contest, where the first to look away would lose. Neither of them seemed to be willing to back down, causing a stalemate between them. Seconds went by in the blink of an eye. As Tyler looked at Amy's serious gaze, he couldn't believe that the mischievousness and seductiveness he usually saw in her eyes was actually just a perfect cover, hiding the real her within. He had never seen her eyes this genuine, clear, and breathtaking before. Tyler was awestruck. At the same time, he realized that this woman was a real performer, and a much more skilled one than him. He disguised himself perfectly, using a literal mask for years, but this woman had actually been wearing her very own invisible mask since he had met her. and he had been completely unaware of it. Looking at her, he finally realized that he had never glimpsed the real her until now. And for some reason, he suddenly felt like his heart was getting heavier. He was definitely disappointed in himself that he had failed to realize this sooner. "Tell me, how long do you plan to keep on acting?" Tyler finally said without breaking their staring contest, causing Amy to finally snap back to reality and her eyes to immediately switch back to their usual playfulness again. "As long as you won't say anything, I guess," she replied, smiling. Tyler clenched his fist. He somehow understood the meaning of her words. He also knew that this woman, who was good at observing others, would surely notice every little thing in his actions, so he wasn't that surprised anymore. However, he really hadn't expected to hear those words from her. Surprisingly, what she said made Tyler recall what Brad had told him, that this was his fault, causing Tyler's eyes to turn even more unusually serious. "Oh well, no worries, Mr. Beauty. I was enjoying that, but sometimes, when I get lonely and I can't even ask my dear fiancé to accompany me to go out and have some fun, I go mad. So now I just want to punish you for being so cold to me over the years, okay? Of course, I won't forget that you always appear when I'm in trouble. So I won't punish you heavily this time, to show my gratitude," she continued as she suddenly slipped her hands around his neck, pulling him closer to her. "So be good and accept your punishment, my beauty," she added, her voice now seductive. She was about to kiss him when he suddenly pulled his body away from her as he forcefully removed her hands from his neck. "Since you plan to punish me with a kiss, then this is my punishment to you for being so naughty. I won't let you kiss this beautiful body again, unless you're honest," he replied, leaving Amy's mouth to hang open in surprise. She hadn't expected this kind of punishment from him, and she couldn't believe that Tyler had just asked her to be honest. How can you ask me to be honest when you yourself—" She swallowed the rest of her words as he slipped out of her clutches. But just as she thought that he would leave, she watched as he walked around the bed and then casually lay beside her. He covered his eyes with the back of his hand. Amy was speechless. "Let me remind you that it's almost dawn. Let's sleep," he said casually. Amy could only blink. "You forbid me to kiss you, and yet you're sleeping with me in the same bed?" she asked with disbelief. Tyler replied lazily, "Let me remind you that this is my bed, so don't expect me to sleep anywhere else." Amy bit her lip. She really didn't understand this man sometimes. No matter how much she observed him, the way his brain worked confused her. She'd even once believed he was an alien disguised as a beautiful man. "Do you really think I'm not going to make a move on you when you're sleeping beside me like this?" Amy asked as she rose and moved her face closer to his. "Do you really think I'll behave myself if beauty is right within my reach? This is the same as offering yourself to me, don't you think?" she continued, purposefully letting her warm breath touch his skin. But Tyler didn't flinch. He continued covering his eyes with his hand, as though he wasn't affected at all. "Even if you forbid me, you can't blame me for being tempted," she added. Her hand was about to touch his chest when Tyler breathed deeply and finally opened his mouth to speak. "Amy, I'm not really threatened by you, so just be good, keep quiet, and sleep," he said. Amy blushed hard. Her eyes widened as she bit her lip as hard as she could. The next second, her face darkened and a puff of air came out of her nose. Thankfully, she still managed to quickly recover, and she narrowed her eyes. She moved suddenly, and Tyler's eyes widened when she sat on his stomach, straddling him. "You—" Tyler, who was stunned, couldn't continue his words when he saw the expression on her face. She looked angry, yet still seductive. She was like a hungry lioness, and her eyes were captivatingly dangerous. "Wrong move, my dear. You shouldn't underestimate me, she said before she bent down and bit his nape as if she had suddenly turned into a hungry vampire. She felt like she was at peace in his embrace, and she smiled. This time, her smile was genuine, and without any pretense as her eyes slowly closed. Meanwhile, in Sean's room, Sean opened his eyes, only to find out that he wasn't hugging his mother, but a pillow. He immediately rose and rubbed his eyes until his gaze fell onto his parents embracing each other. He stared at them with his still sleepy eyes, and without a thought, the little guy crawled toward them and forced himself between them. That's why you have to accompany me so you can watch out and tell me if I'm going overboard. In short, my role is to be the police officer ready to stop you when you start breaking the law, huh? Somehow that sounds nice. Well, yeah, it's not that bad. I'd love to punish you every time you go overboard. Oh my, I think I should start anticipating some punishment from my beautiful partner now. Can I request an intimate punishment? Than he realized by simply looking at him. Look, I'm here to listen. You need to learn to talk about your feelings, continued Brad, causing Tyler to finally snap. This man, does he think that everyone is like him and able to open up about everything without getting embarrassed at all? He silently complained. Hearing Brad's words made Tyler think about the good old days when Brad had been as cold as an ice cube and had been unable to talk about anything he had felt or experienced. He even remembered how he had used to be so painfully clueless and innocent that he sought advice about every tiny thing. These were memories that made Tyler feel like his life back then had been one hell of a fun, yet troublesome ride. Since Haley had disappeared, Brad's emotional intelligence had drastically improved. A huge reason for this change was surely because he had become a father, and Tyler didn't deny he was glad about it. However, he was troubled by Brad's constant prodding regarding this matter. Episode 315. The atmosphere is changing. Tyler and Amy had left Sean's room, leaving Brad alone with his sleeping wife and son. Brad had then walked around the bed where he stood right beside Haley. He gazed at her lovingly before he bent over and gently kissed her. It was a simple peck on the lips, but full of warmth and love. His gaze was burning, yet gentle. Seeing his wife and son sleeping soundly and peacefully gave him a warm feeling inside, and as he watched them, his only thought was that he would never let them be parted again. After gazing at them for a long while, he finally moved. He sat down on the bed and was about to lay down beside Sean when he stopped and got up again. He wasn't happy about something, but he wasn't sure what it was. He looked at his son again and kissed his forehead. Then he turned to move Sean further onto the right side, before quietly pulling the side table against the bed so it would serve as a barricade. It was a king-size bed and very spacious, so it was unlikely his son would fall out of bed. But Brad just wanted to make sure he was safe. Once he had moved the table, Brad took a large pillow and also placed that on Sean's right side. Satisfied that Sean was safe, he walked around to the other side of the bed, and he gently moved Haley toward the middle of the bed. Finally, he lay down beside his wife. Haley's arms subconsciously reached out for her little boy, and she gathered him toward her and spooned him, while Brad wrapped his arms around his wife's slim waist, pulled her toward him, and spooned her. As he held his beloved wife, he felt his fatigue take over. He started to relax, and in no time his eyes had closed, and the family of 3 were sleeping soundly together. Meanwhile, Tyler was standing in front of the guest room with Amy in his arms. He was feeling troubled because, for some reason, the guest door was locked. He didn't understand because the room was always left open. He couldn't call for the butler or one of the maids to open the door because he was holding Amy in his arms. He had no choice but to take Amy to his own room. He carefully walked back upstairs until he reached his room. He opened the door extremely carefully and quietly, afraid that he would wake the sleeping woman. But as he placed her gently down on the bed, he noticed movement in her eyes, and he frowned. Then he realized that she had been feigning sleep the whole time. This woman, when did she wake up? He thought as he removed his arms from around her. But before he could move away, her eyes opened wide and she grinned, stopping Tyler in his tracks. "Thank you for carrying me like a princess, my dear Mr. Beauty," she said with a wide smile. He hadn't expected her to be so brazen about pretending to be asleep. And he let out a deep sigh. Amy winked at him playfully. "How long have you been awake?" Tyler asked. "Since Brad the Great came into the bedroom. I had just been to the bathroom, so I was already awake," she answered cheerfully. And he once again felt that he had been fooled. He had carried her down to the guest room and then back again upstairs with such extreme care, only to find out that she was awake all this time. Once again, he wanted to punish her for her tricks. You... Tyler was lost for words. He was angry, and yet the woman on the bed looked delighted. "I really enjoyed the ride," she said, and he snapped. He raised his hand and grasped her by the chin. "You know what? I'm reaching the end of my rope here, so stop playing games with me or I will have to punish you again," he muttered with an obvious warning in his eyes. But still, Amy didn't flinch. Instead, she raised her hand and held Tyler's chin as she spoke, copying his every gesture. "What a coincidence. I wanted to punish you too," she said, and they both fell quiet. And this time, as they gazed into each other's eyes, the atmosphere between them was drastically different than it had ever been before. Episode 316, Now You See Me. The look in Tyler's eyes was deep and unfathomable, as usual, but he never looked at her with this level of intensity before. Nor had she looked back at him with such openness. Their eyes had always been glimmering with both playfulness and lack of seriousness every time they looked at each other. But now, it seemed different. Amy was charmed by the beauty of his eyes. They were as deep as a bottomless abyss. His gorgeous nose and sexy lips were causing havoc inside her, almost causing her to lose any control she had over her emotions. Even though resisting the urge to playfully flirt with this beautiful creature was hard for her, she felt like the atmosphere between them had changed, and it was too much for her to take. The extremely rare, solemn, and earnest look in his eyes destroyed her usually unbreakable composure and self-restraint. They gazed at each other quietly and intently. It was as if they were suddenly in a staring contest, where the first to look away would lose. Neither of them seemed to be willing to back down, causing a stalemate between them. Seconds went by in the blink of an eye. As Tyler looked at Amy's serious gaze, he couldn't believe that the mischievousness and seductiveness he usually saw in her eyes was actually just a perfect cover, hiding the real her within. He had never seen her eyes this genuine, clear, and breathtaking before. Tyler was awestruck. At the same time, he realized that this woman was a real performer, and a much more skilled one than him. He disguised himself perfectly, using a literal mask for years, but this woman had actually been wearing her very own invisible mask since he had met her, and he had been completely unaware of it. Looking at her, he finally realized that he had never glimpsed the real her until now. And for some reason, he suddenly felt like his heart was getting heavier. He was definitely disappointed in himself that he had failed to realize this sooner. "Tell me, how long do you plan to keep on acting?" Tyler finally said without breaking their staring contest, causing Amy to finally snap back to reality, and her eyes to immediately switch back to their usual playfulness again. "As long as you won't say anything, I guess," she replied, smiling. Tyler clenched his fist. He somehow understood the meaning of her words. He also knew that this woman, who was good at observing others, would surely notice every little thing in his actions, so he wasn't that surprised anymore. However, He really hadn't expected to hear those words from her. Surprisingly, what she said made Tyler recall what Brad had told him, that this was his fault, causing Tyler's eyes to turn even more unusually serious. Oh well, no worries, Mr. Beauty. I was enjoying that, but sometimes, when I get lonely and I can't even ask my dear fiancé to accompany me to go out and have some fun, I go mad. So now I just want to punish you for being so cold to me over the years, okay? Of course, I won't forget that you always appear when I'm in trouble. So I won't punish you heavily this time, to show my gratitude, she continued as she suddenly slipped her hands around his neck, pulling him closer to her. So be good and accept your punishment, my beauty, she added, her voice now seductive. She was about to kiss him when he suddenly pulled his body away from her, as he forcefully removed her hands from his neck. Since you plan to punish me with a kiss, then this is my punishment to you for being so naughty. I won't let you kiss this beautiful body again, unless you're honest, he replied, leaving Amy's mouth to hang open in surprise. She hadn't expected this kind of punishment from him, and she couldn't believe that Tyler had just asked her to be honest. How can you ask me to be honest when you yourself... She swallowed the rest of her words as he slipped out of her clutches. But just as she thought that he would leave, she watched as he walked around the bed and then casually lay beside her. He covered his eyes with the back of his hand. Amy was speechless. Let me remind you that it's almost dawn. Let's sleep, he said casually. Amy could only blink. You forbid me to kiss you, and yet you're sleeping with me in the same bed? She asked with disbelief. Tyler replied lazily. Let me remind you that this is my bed, so don't expect me to sleep anywhere else. Amy bit her lip. She really didn't understand this man sometimes. No matter how much she observed him, the way his brain worked confused her. She'd even once believed he was an alien disguised as a beautiful man. Do you really think I'm not going to make a move on you when you're sleeping beside me like this? Amy asked as she rose and moved her face closer to his. Do you really think I'll behave myself if beauty is right within my reach? This is the same as offering yourself to me, don't you think? She continued, purposefully letting her warm breath touch his skin. But Tyler didn't flinch. He continued covering his eyes with his hand, as though he wasn't affected at all. Even if you forbid me, you can't blame me for being tempted, she added. Her hand was about to touch his chest when Tyler breathed deeply and finally opened his mouth to speak. Amy, I'm not really threatened by you, so just be good, keep quiet, and sleep, he said. Amy blushed hard. Her eyes widened as she bit her lip as hard as she could. The next second, her face darkened and a puff of air came out of her nose. Thankfully, she still managed to quickly recover, and she narrowed her eyes. She moved suddenly and Tyler's eyes widened when she sat on his stomach, straddling him. You... Tyler, who was stunned, couldn't continue his words when he saw the expression on her face. She looked angry, yet still seductive. She was like a hungry lioness, and her eyes were captivatingly dangerous. Wrong move, my dear. You shouldn't underestimate me, she said before she bent down and bit his nape as if she had suddenly turned into a hungry vampire. Episode 317, Midnight Snack. Tyler jolted as Amy's teeth sunk into him. He was shocked to the point that he couldn't tell whether she was hurting him or not. All he could feel was a scorching heat coming from her mouth and skin. His heart began beating abnormally, and her sudden attack made him forget how to think. However, as usual, Tyler still managed to quickly regain his composure, although this time, it was a little bit slower than it normally would be. He grabbed her shoulders and pushed her away. She was still straddling him. He didn't let go of her shoulders, but he looked at her with aggression in his eyes. Amy, didn't I warn you to behave? Are you really trying to test me? He sounded angry. His gaze was cold and threatening. Amy didn't care. She didn't know whether he was being serious right now or he was just being like this to scare her again, but she wasn't going to back off. "Aren't you the one testing me here, Mr. Beauty?" she retorted. She held her seductive smile in place. It was alluring enough to drive any man insane. Except, of course, for the few one-woman men in the world. "Now let go, Mr. Beauty. Let me show you my power," she continued. Tyler grit his teeth. He could hardly find words to say. All he wanted was to make her stop teasing him before everything broke loose. "My dear fiancé, get off me now while I'm still being nice," he finally replied. He was still glaring at her, trying to show her that he was serious. However, like a fearless creature, the woman on top of him smiled sweetly and seductively. "My dear fiancé, let go of my shoulders while I'm still being nice," she replied, saying almost the same words he had said. He knew it was hopeless to try and reason with this woman. "I used to be the one who left everyone speechless," he thought. "How can I win with this woman? She's the only one who gives me this kind of trouble. And a headache." As he thought, his grip on her shoulders tightened a little, and he breathed deeply once again. At the same time, Amy started stretching her hands as they crawled over his chest. She fluttered her eyelashes seductively as she looked at the man below her. "You really are so beautiful. I'm sorry, but it's impossible for me to resist my urge for the most delicious man," she continued as she seductively bit her lower lip. Her teasing almost made him lose his mind. The warm sensation in his abdomen was getting hotter, and he couldn't take it anymore. He moved, and in the blink of an eye, pinned Amy down. She smiled despite being surprised. Before she could tease him again, he took her hands and put them together. Her brows knit, but as she was about to speak, he stood and, like a flash, rolled her and wrapped her up in a blanket. Amy's eyes widened in disbelief. "What are you doing?" She swallowed her words when he rolled her again until she finally looked like sushi ready to be chopped. After ensuring that she couldn't move, he lazily lay down beside her once again. How could you do this to a gorgeous lady?" "Tyler, remove this. It's hot," she started complaining. When Tyler saw that she was struggling to free herself, he heaved a sigh before spooning the warm sushi beside him. He wrapped his arms around her to make sure she wasn't going to break free as his deep voice rang in her ears. "I couldn't sleep last night because of you, so let me sleep for a while," he said. Somehow, hearing his voice this week for the first time made her heart flutter, causing her to fall speechless. She didn't know whether he was really exhausted, but for some reason, she felt like she had instantly lost her energy to bicker with him. She, too, suddenly felt tired and yawned. In no time, she felt his breathing become heavier, indicating that he was already asleep. His arms were still wrapped around her, and the warmth coming from him somehow soothed her heart. She felt like she was at peace in his embrace, and she smiled. This time, her smile was genuine, and without any pretense as her eyes slowly closed. Meanwhile, in Sean's room, Sean opened his eyes, only to find out that he wasn't hugging his mother, but a pillow. He immediately rose and rubbed his eyes until his gaze fell onto his parents embracing each other. He stared at them with his still sleepy eyes, and without a thought, the little guy crawled toward them and forced himself between them. Episode 318, Early Birds. The sun was already shining pleasantly when the family of three stepped out of Sean's room. They looked so cute in their pajamas that anyone who saw them would think that they were currently in a magazine photo shoot portraying a perfect family. Haley was carrying Sean in her arms while Brad walked beside her. They halted when they saw Tyler step out of his room. He seemed to be in a hurry. His hair was still messy, and he was obviously surprised to see Brad and his wife and son.
"Oh, good morning, Uncle Tyler."
Sean immediately greeted him. Tyler could only smile. Good morning to you too, he replied. Brad casually looked at his wristwatch before he stared at him with a raised eyebrow. It's rare for you to wake up this late, Tyler, Brad said. Tyler ran his hands through his hair. Well, I haven't slept properly for many days, so... Tyler couldn't continue his explanation because the door behind him opened again, and a woman stepped out of his room, looking a little bit mad. She looked like she was about to open her mouth when she realized Haley, Brad, and Sean were all looking at her.
Good morning, Auntie. Did you sleep in Uncle Tyler's room?
Sean was again the first to speak. His question almost choked Amy, and it took a moment for her to find her words. Good morning, baby. She greeted the little guy with a smile as she moved closer to him and gently pinched his adorable cheeks.
Auntie, did you two get married in secret?
The boy asked. Amy froze for a second while Tyler stood there stunned. Ha ha! What makes you think that? She asked, forcing a laugh. Sean tilted his head as he spoke.
You told me before that a boy and a girl should only sleep together if they're married.
The boy answered. Amy finally choked. She coughed for a while before she could move and tousle Sean's hair. That's right, Sean. I did say that. She replied before she sidled toward the little guy in Haley's arms and whispered to him. Your uncle and I didn't sleep together, okay? You know your uncle's very strict, she said. She decided to use the other meaning of sleep together, so she wouldn't technically be lying to the bright boy, who fortunately didn't ask any more questions. Haley was the one to question her next. Amy, who's he? She asked. This time, Tyler was the one who choked. What? You don't know him? Amy was surprised as she looked at Tyler and then at her friend before she just went and pulled Tyler toward her. She doesn't know you, so introduce yourself, Amy said. Tyler scratched his head. I'm that Mr. Clark you used to know, he said. Haley's eyes widened. What? So you were actually wearing a mask back then? She asked. Tyler answered her with a nod. These two are engaged, Brad said. Haley gasped. So Amy was actually the fiancé you were talking about back then? She asked, looking at Tyler, who just nodded with a smile. She looked at Amy, her eyes filled with curiosity. She was about to ask another question when the butler approached. That morning, the Clark residence was the epitome of a home full of life and love. The atmosphere was so bright and fluffy that the flowers in the garden seemed to be in full bloom, even though they weren't. After breakfast, Brad simply watched his wife preparing their child for school while the engaged couple, Amy and Tyler, watched them from the sidelines. I think we need to watch them more, Amy said with narrowed eyes. Tyler just glanced at her. Why? He asked. We talked last night. Haley's case is definitely something simple, even though she herself was actually the one who wanted to be helped the most. And I'm sure Brad the Great and Sean are doing their best to make her smile again. That's why I think we should watch first. That way, I can work out what's missing, she explained. Tyler leaned lazily against the couch as he spoke. So what's the plan? After sending Sean to school, what is your brother's plan? She asked instead of answering him. Brad wants to take her somewhere, he said. Amy's operation mode had been activated. Her eyes twinkled with excitement as she looked at her partner. Okay, we're going to stalk them all day, she declared with a mischievous smile. Somehow, he could tell it was a great idea, even though he got goosebumps every time he thought about the next plan this fiancé of his would devise after this. Amy, you'd better treat this seriously, he said. She crawled on top of him and put her finger on his lips. What's this? Are you saying you don't trust my abilities? She asked, still smiling naughtily, but with a dangerous gaze. Tyler flicked her forehead. It has nothing to do with trust. I just don't want you to overdo things and create a storm, he replied. Amy chuckled. As expected with the veteran bodyguard and the relationship bodyguard, you're still so strict when it comes to them. I just don't want any more unnecessary trouble for them. They've already been through a lot. I know. That's why you have to accompany me so you can watch out and tell me if I'm going overboard. In short, my role is to be the police officer ready to stop you when you start breaking the law, huh? Somehow that sounds nice. Well, yeah, it's not that bad. I'd love to punish you every time you go overboard. Oh my, I think I should start anticipating some punishment from my beautiful partner now. Can I request an intimate punishment? Episode 319, Trigger Warning. In front of Sean's school, Haley was kissed by the adorable little boy on her cheek before he embraced her lovingly.
I'll wait for you to fetch me after class, Mommy,
he said. Haley hugged him back for a long while, obviously hesitant to let go of her son. Brad just couldn't sit waiting in the car anymore, watching his wife kneeling there, hugging their son as the little guy caressed her back. His eyes blazed when he thought that there was something wrong with his wife, and all he wanted at that moment was to rush toward them to soothe his distressed wife. He hastily began opening the door when Ken spoke. "Boss, you agreed not to get out of the car," he reminded him. And as expected, Brad was forced to stop. But his cold aura intensified instantly, freezing the entire car in no time. Gladly, Ken somehow learned his lesson now. He knew he couldn't stop this man at all, so he quickly made a decision and sent a message to Tyler upon seeing the changes in Brad's expression. Due to whatever had happened in the park the night before, Brad's bodyguards had suggested that he stay in the car. Even Tyler, though he wasn't his bodyguard anymore, had firmly told him to obey his guards. But just as Tyler had expected, Brad would surely be uncontrollable. Tyler and Amy were inside a low-key car on the side of the road as they quietly watched the flow of events when Tyler's phone vibrated. When Tyler read the message, he wasn't even surprised. He had come to expect this from Ken, the current leader of Brad's bodyguards. "The boss is about to step out. I need your help, please." Tyler pinched the bridge of his nose as he quickly called Brad. "Brad, didn't I tell you to stay put?" Tyler immediately said when the call connected. But the man on the other side of the phone didn't speak, causing Tyler to heave a deep sigh. Since Haley had come back, Tyler had expected that the usually stubborn Brad, who didn't care about anything else but his wife, would return as well, and he was absolutely right. If you step out of the car now, the world will know Sean's identity. And when that happens, we'll have no choice but to surround him with countless guards from now on. That's the last thing you want to happen, isn't it? Tyler continued, and after a long silence, the slightly open door of the car immediately closed, indicating that what he had said had worked. Knowing that Brad had calmed down, Tyler rested his face on his knuckles as he ended the call. Tyler had used Sean to stop him because he knew why Brad had chosen not to reveal Sean to the public. Brad wanted his son to experience a normal childhood. He didn't want him to experience the hellish life Brad had gone through when he was young. He didn't want Sean to feel like he was in a cage surrounded by guards at such a young age. Brad simply wanted Sean to spend his childhood freely. That was why he had never shown his face in Sean's school, nor let anyone discover his son's identity. "Hey, Mr. Beauty, why is your brother so obedient to you when it comes to things like this?" Amy asked, looking at him through her binoculars. "Obedient? Not at all. I was just reminding him of what's at stake. That guy's brain tends to turn upside down when his wife is in distress, so he needs an alarm to wake up every now and then," he replied. His answer satisfied Amy, so she didn't ask any more. "Ah, Haley's finally let little Sean go," Amy exclaimed as she quickly raised her binoculars. Looking intently at her every expression, Amy was sure that Haley was both very happy and sad at the same time. As she waved goodbye to her son, Amy knew that if this was the old Haley, she would be tearing up with a smile on her face as she sent her son to school for the first time. However, Haley still wasn't reacting normally, and the way she was behaving made Amy narrow her eyes. Amy had been thinking about Haley's situation for quite some time. She had been watching her since last night, and it made her heart hurt. She had realized that the reason for Haley's inability to cry was because of the severe depression she had gone through for years. She had been so severely depressed that she had settled into a cry-proof state to survive. Amy couldn't even imagine just how much pain she had suffered to have turned out like this. Fortunately, Haley was physically fine, and her fighting spirit was now getting back to its usual strong state. So Amy was confident that she would be better sooner rather than later. After all, this Haley, her dearest friend, was still the same strong and determined woman she had known 5 years ago. As Tyler drove, tailing the black car before them, Amy suddenly spoke. I believe that Haley needs something. She just needs a certain trigger to get her to cry. And once that happens, everything will be fine. Tyler's brows creased with curiosity. Trigger? He asked. Like a detective, Amy stroked her chin pensively. She narrowed her eyes and looked like she was currently contemplating her ultimate plan. After a while, her eyes twinkled victoriously, but no words came out of her mouth. Tell me about your plan first, Amy. Don't you dare keep it to yourself, said Tyler as he kept glancing at her, but Amy just smiled mischievously at him. Don't worry, Mr. Beauty. My plan will be a sure hit. Believe me, she replied, looking proud of herself, but Tyler still didn't quite believe her. If you don't spill the beans, we'll have to go back to the mansion, Tyler threatened. Amy puffed her cheeks. She wanted to tease him and drive him crazy with curiosity, but she hadn't expected him to actually threaten her. Am I not supposed to be your partner? Tell me, or else the mission ends here, Tyler continued. Amy almost wanted to bite his earlobe again, but because she needed him badly at that moment, she surrendered and revealed her plan. I get it. I'll tell you, okay? She finally said. Our goal is to find the trigger. So we should try different things. Sean and your brother's lovey-dovey fluffiness and cuteness overload attacks don't seem to be working on her. So I'm thinking about trying something new. Do you remember when Haley got drunk? She ran away that night because she was actually jealous. And that night she also cried, right? You mean, the first step is to make her jealous. Episode 319, Trigger Warning. In front of Sean's school, Haley was kissed by the adorable little boy on her cheek before he embraced her lovingly.
I'll wait for you to fetch me after class, Mommy,
he said. Haley hugged him back for a long while, obviously hesitant to let go of her son. Brad just couldn't sit waiting in the car anymore, watching his wife kneeling there, hugging their son as the little guy caressed her back. His eyes blazed when he thought that there was something wrong with his wife, and all he wanted at that moment was to rush toward them to soothe his distressed wife. He hastily began opening the door when Ken spoke. Boss, you agreed not to get out of the car, he reminded him. And as expected, Brad was forced to stop. But his cold aura intensified instantly, freezing the entire car in no time. Gladly, Ken somehow learned his lesson now. He knew he couldn't stop this man at all, so he quickly made a decision and sent a message to Tyler, upon seeing the changes in Brad's expression. Due to whatever had happened in the park the night before, Brad's bodyguards had suggested that he stay in the car. Even Tyler, though he wasn't his bodyguard anymore, had firmly told him to obey his guards. But just as Tyler had expected, Brad would surely be uncontrollable. Tyler and Amy were inside a low-key car on the side of the road as they quietly watched the flow of events when Tyler's phone vibrated. When Tyler read the message, he wasn't even surprised. He had come to expect this from Ken, the current leader of Brad's bodyguards. The boss is about to step out. I need your help, please. Tyler pinched the bridge of his nose as he quickly called Brad. Brad, didn't I tell you to stay put? Tyler immediately said when the call connected. But the man on the other side of the phone didn't speak, causing Tyler to heave a deep sigh. Since Haley had come back, Tyler had expected that the usually stubborn Brad, who didn't care about anything else but his wife, would return as well, and he was absolutely right. If you step out of the car now, the world will know Sean's identity. And when that happens, we'll have no choice but to surround him with countless guards from now on. That's the last thing you want to happen, isn't it? Tyler continued, and after a long silence, the slightly open door of the car immediately closed, indicating that what he had said had worked. Knowing that Brad had calmed down, Tyler rested his face on his knuckles as he ended the call. Tyler had used Sean to stop him because he knew why Brad had chosen not to reveal Sean to the public. Brad wanted his son to experience a normal childhood. He didn't want him to experience the hellish life Brad had gone through when he was young. He didn't want Sean to feel like he was in a cage surrounded by guards at such a young age. Brad simply wanted Sean to spend his childhood freely. That was why he had never shown his face in Sean's school, nor let anyone discover his son's identity. "Hey, Mr. Beauty, why is your brother so obedient to you when it comes to things like this?" Amy asked, looking at him through her binoculars. "Obedient? Not at all. I was just reminding him of what's at stake. That guy's brain tends to turn upside down when his wife is in distress, so he needs an alarm to wake up every now and then," he replied. His answer satisfied Amy, so she didn't ask any more. "Ah, Haley's finally let little Sean go," Amy exclaimed as she quickly raised her binoculars. Looking intently at her every expression, Amy was sure that Haley was both very happy and sad at the same time. As she waved goodbye to her son, Amy knew that if this was the old Haley, she would be tearing up with a smile on her face as she sent her son to school for the first time. However, Haley still wasn't reacting normally, and the way she was behaving made Amy narrow her eyes. Amy had been thinking about Haley's situation for quite some time. She had been watching her since last night, and it made her heart hurt. She had realized that the reason for Haley's inability to cry was because of the severe depression she had gone through for years. She had been so severely depressed that she had settled into a cry-proof state to survive. Amy couldn't even imagine just how much pain she had suffered to have turned out like this. Fortunately, Haley was physically fine, and her fighting spirit was now getting back to its usual strong state. So Amy was confident that she would be better sooner rather than later. After all, this Haley, her dearest friend, was still the same strong and determined woman she had known 5 years ago. As Tyler drove, tailing the black car before them, Amy suddenly spoke. "I believe that Haley needs something. She just needs a certain trigger to get her to cry. And once that happens, everything will be fine." Tyler's brows creased with curiosity. "Trigger?" he asked. Like a detective, Amy stroked her chin pensively. She narrowed her eyes and looked like she was currently contemplating her ultimate plan. After a while, her eyes twinkled victoriously, but no words came out of her mouth. "Tell me about your plan first, Amy. Don't you dare keep it to yourself," said Tyler as he kept glancing at her, but Amy just smiled mischievously at him. "Don't worry, Mr. Beauty. My plan will be a sure hit. Believe me," she replied, looking proud of herself, but Tyler still didn't quite believe her. "If you don't spill the beans, we'll have to go back to the mansion," Tyler threatened. Amy puffed her cheeks. She wanted to tease him and drive him crazy with curiosity, but she hadn't expected him to actually threaten her. "Am I not supposed to be your partner? Tell me, or else the mission ends here," Tyler continued. Amy almost wanted to bite his earlobe again, but because she needed him badly at that moment, she surrendered and revealed her plan. I get it. I'll tell you, okay?" she finally said. "Our goal is to find the trigger. So we should try different things. Sean and your brother's lovey-dovey fluffiness and cuteness overload attacks don't seem to be working on her. So I'm thinking about trying something new. Do you remember when Haley got drunk? She ran away that night because she was actually jealous. And that night she also cried, right? You mean, the first step is to make her jealous." Episode 320, A Promise Kept. On hearing Amy's plan, Tyler's brows immediately creased. He understood what Amy wanted to happen, and he himself truly believed that it was a good idea. However, he imagined Brad turning ice cold as soon as they told him about the plan. "So you're planning to find a woman to cling to Brad while his wife is watching?" Tyler asked. Amy rested her head on the headrest as she replied, "The woman is a given, but about the clinging thing, I think I should make a decision on that once I see your brother's reaction. I can't just decide without asking him, or else I might be thrown into the river by his henchmen. But I'm worrying over nothing, right?" she said. She wore her usual playful smile, but her words caused him to glance at her and raise his eyebrows. "Worrying over nothing?" He repeated her words while she cuddled up to him, She purposely got close enough that he could feel her breath on his skin. "Because my dear fiancé will rescue me again," she uttered sexily as she ran her naughty index finger on Tyler's sharp, beautiful jaw. The car suddenly slowed down. Tyler quickly slipped one of his hands into his waistband and pulled out a pair of handcuffs. Amy immediately backed off, almost smacking herself on the car door. "Don't forget that I'm a police officer today. Try misbehaving again, and I'll cuff you," he uttered with a smirk. Amy pouted in disappointment. "Be glad, Mr. Beauty. If it wasn't for Haley, I would never back off. Even if you took me to jail," she muttered. The vein in Tyler's temple throbbed as the car accelerated once again. Meanwhile, the atmosphere inside the black car ahead was warm. Brad was very happy to finally monopolize his dear wife, even though they only had 2 hours to spend together before going back to school to pick up Sean. "Brad, where are we going?" she asked. He just smiled. "Somewhere we've never gone together," he replied. Haley tilted her head slightly as she started thinking. "You'll know once we get there," he continued. After a while, the car finally reached its destination. As soon as Haley looked through the car window, her eyes widened a bit. In that instant, she remembered what she told him 5 years ago on the night before they parted. "When you come back, I'll take you to the beach, the market, the mall, the street, and everywhere." Those words were like echoes from a distant place. She remembered that she had told him that because they both wanted to be like any normal couple, safe and free. She wanted to bring Brad to every place he wasn't allowed to go because of his dangerous situation. And while she had waited for him during her pregnancy, Haley had been dreaming about the day when they wouldn't need to hide anymore. Her heart started to feel both happiness and sadness. Sadness for the lost time, and happiness for the fact that he was finally free. He immediately noticed the change in her expression, and he was confused about whether she was happy or sad. "You don't like it here?" he asked. Seeing the worry in his eyes, she immediately nodded. "Of course I like it here," she exclaimed before she looked outside again. I just remembered that I was the one who told you that I would someday bring you here," she added with a sad, nostalgic look in her eyes. Brad suddenly yanked her toward him. He hugged her tightly, as though he were trying his hardest to soothe the sadness in her heart. "It's fine now, Haley. We can go anywhere we want now, just like them," he assured her. She embraced him back. The sadness in her heart faded in an instant, as though his words and embraces were all that her heart needed. "But you're famous now. Last night was dangerous," she said as she pulled away from him. He cupped her face with both of his hands. "All I need is a little change in appearance, and everything will be fine," he said before landing a peck on the tip of her nose. "Can you help me fix my hair again?" he continued. Haley, who had just recovered from his sudden attack, snapped. "Of course. I'd love to do that," she quickly replied. "Okay, let me fix your hair now." Haley was expecting Brad to let go of her, but he didn't. He just stared at her for a long while without saying anything. "What's wrong?" she asked curiously. Brad pulled her toward him and made her sit on his lap. She was stunned again. I think my body needs a little energy," he said. Stunned and puzzled, her brow creased as she asked, "Energizing? Are you not feeling well?" "I was completely fine a moment ago, but I think I used up too much energy gazing at you and thinking about you since I woke up. I think I was too excited to spend time with you," Brad replied. Haley choked. His words were like flirtatious pickup lines, but Brad said them in a way that didn't seem to be insincere at all. His dark, sincere eyes were looking at her so honestly that she simply believed his words, no matter how silly they sounded. What kind of energizing do you need? I can buy something suitable for you," she suggested. But what Brad said next left her more dumbfounded.
I need a 10-minute kiss to fully recover.